I'm already starting with the fucking Ultima Online soundtrack, everybody. This is going to be good. Alright, come on in, come on in. Look at this. Tweets are pre-prepared. We've got a nice little document for you all. It's going to be lovely. Oh, let's just close the door, though, so I'm not shouting at the rest of it. Bear with me a sec. 1 second, 1 second. I'm so on point. I've got the door open. One of these days, I'll be completely and utterly prepared when everyone shows up. But it is not this day. Right. Come on in, find a seat. Well, I should probably take on the moniker of Mr. Viking today. It's my educator name. Was inferred me by, I believe it was Reflective Gamer's youngest, who is so lovely. Right. Oh no, that is entirely wrong. Please don't break. There we go. Oh, it's terrifyingly close. What happened to the whole subtlety of this? Bloody hell. That'll do. Oh, keep the pork with us as well because there's no cat. Right. Hindle! What ho! Camille, lovely to see you. Egno. What ho indeed. How goes it? Tal, I haven't spoken to you in tens of seconds. DG Alternative. What ho! Stomposaurus. Economy. Trade. Investment. We'll wait for everyone to come on in and get settled down before we get into the meat of it. But TLDR of today is that we're going to be having a crack at designing an in-game economy. Now I'm specifically using in-game economy and not digital economy, so that we don't make the mistake of designing for items which can be bought or sold or acquired outside of the game. But I'll get into specifics of that. Alfred the Deluge, what ho! Rhymes with Moose, what ho! Lovely to have you all with us. I'll level with you though. Like I got up pretty early this morning. I've been looking at fucking Ultima Online resource charts and basic economic theory. So yeah. At one point, so after a little while, I'm going to be bringing in DJ because. DJ's got a little bit more of a grounding in economic styles, so So DJ's gonna be my sidekick on this one for today, which I'm very much looking forward to. Gamble Games, what ho! Gamble saying, "Oh, good. I was looking for something to watch while working this evening." Well, Gamble, it is a pleasure to see you. It's lovely. Trizilla, is it Trizilla? Trizillata. Well, either way, what ho! It's lovely to have you with us. So, Aspenix, I almost missed you. Cheers to you. What ho! I'm looking forward to this. I've been looking forward to this for a while because for those of you that don't know, like I've been a massive fan of Ultima Online and EVE Online, and I played a lot of World of Warcraft. I've played games like Skyrim. I've played games like Fable. I've played an inordinate amount of Morrowind. I'm trying to think of other RPGs I've sunk an inordinate amount of time into. Oh, hell. Bloody Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate where oh my god. Baldur's Gate where you could load up a character on your second save, have them drop all their items, then have them reload the character, and all their items would still be on their character and on the floor. So you could just dupe items into infinity. So Gamble Games is saying, Will, are you making an MMO? Don't make an MMO. We're not making an MMO today. We are designing the economy. We are assuming that there's going to be multiple people, but theoretically, if we design our economy well enough that it survives multiple people, then we should have the baseline for... Oh, and Gamble Games, thank you for the follow. We should have the baseline for something that could be applied to a single-player environment. Our goal today will be to it's like a thought exercise, basically. I know I'm going to restate this throughout for the... Oh, Gamble Games! Fucking hell! Why did I forget this? Dude, Do you want to fucking jump on fucking... Oh. Firstly, I'm so sorry for all the swears. Dude, how's it going? Why did that take me so long to realise? If you'd like to jump on and chat about this, then I would love to have your input. So, I don't know if you've seen what we've been doing on this, dude, but we've been doing like... we've been doing a design exercise, like maybe, I guess, once every other week. And last week, we did a fictional... we did a game based on a fictional Saturday morning cartoon where it was a multiplayer title where one side is inherently better than the other. So we tried to come up with ways and solutions to how we could adhere to the fictional lore whilst also making a game experience that was as fun and as balanced as we could make, which is hashtag reboot Endo Team. Echo! What's going down? Feckin' hell. Oh, and sorry, for those of you who don't know, so Gamble Games, that's my good buddy Matt. It is, yes, it is Matt. I haven't gone completely mental. Yes. Yeah, bloody hell. I had a moment there. And Matt made RPG Tycoon. You know, no big bloody deal. So yeah, what ho, Echo? Matt's like, so, Agents of Mayhem? Oh, Kestrel, I'm so sorry, and please apologise to Little Bear for me. I am so sorry for the cursing. As I said, Matt is an exceedingly good friend of mine, and has been worlds of excellent to me at varying events across the world, and yeah, has more than a little bit of experience in, you know, designing fantasy economies. Made a bloody game about it. Hang on, let me bring up... There we go. And if you're wondering what today's soundtrack is, it's the Ultima Online Complete soundtrack. 1 hour 20 of the most banging tunes ever to grace Britbank. Matt made a bloody game about it. Hey, you say badly, but, you know. So, we're just waiting for everybody to filter in. Ah, Dashkal sneaking in there. What ho? Roguelink, always a pleasure to see you. What ho? So, yeah. Roguelink with... Wait, you mean Endo Team wasn't real? Oh, no. I do think that we probably could have got Reboot Endo Team trending if I'd put some effort into it. Compliment Cap. What ho? Drinks and cookie ready as always. Brilliant. Eramon, greetings. Wow, I am pumped for this today. Like I said, Ultima Online was one of my favourites, and I found Eve, well, not the greatest of all the MMOs I played, was just so... Its simplicity worked wonders. You're all going through the commands. Okie dokie. So, no rhymes with moose. There is not a Google Plus yet. Kestrel North saying, if Endo Team isn't real, what kind of cereal am I eating? Ah, yes, Lewis. What ho? Yeah, I got a pork tin. Actually, before we get started, let me show you this. So this was a very late birthday gift for Christmas gift from Alistair. And look, it's got a little, it's a little pork lunchbox. So happy. Shout out to Dungeon Siege 3. Yeah. Oh, it does blitz through these tracks very quickly. Hang on, let me just bring it down a little bit so it doesn't get creepy. Okie dokie Lokis. That is adorable. Oh, yes. And, why did you... I might have to pick another soundtrack. This is very jarring. And yes, everybody, before we get started, it is Lewis's birthday today. So please do take a second to wish him a very happy birthday. We've been doing a lot of that on the... Oh, wait. Ultima. Shield your roll. We've been doing a lot of that on the Discord. So there we go. Right. We've done 10 minutes of Waffle-mancy, which I think is about the right amount of time. So, Shall we begin, one and all? Right. So before we get DJ and then Matt on the line. Da-da-da-da-da! Oh, hang on. Okay, I need another soundtrack. Sorry. Warcraft 2 is going to make me too pumped. It's a good fantasy soundtrack. Oh, what about Total Annihilation? Let's go for that one. Oh, so, Matt, we've been doing, like, faux GDDs, but we're making them all open source. So, like, with the one we did last time, the cartoon was fictional, and all the design stuff that everyone came up with was just, like, to be used. So, while they're not, like, the greatest GDDs in existence, if anyone wants to use them for, like, educational purposes or for whatever, then they can. Hinder, we're not doing Dark Souls. I think we need something more chipper. Ooh, what about Fable 2? There we go. 5 hours of Fable music. Haze shift. What ho! Rainier. I need to have a look at yours. I do. I promise I will do that. There we go. A classic bit of fantasy banter. Or as I like to call it, bantasy. Okay. So, assuming you can all hear me okay, let's switch back to the the design and get to it. I put that up there so I can be all expressive. So, before we get started, I caught fire once. What ho! Does being a waffle mancer mean that your Patronus is a waffle? So, technically my Patronus is, I believe it was some kind of wolf creature according to Pottermore, but friends of mine have informed me that actually my Patronus is a duck. So it's Duck Specto Duck Tronum. I don't get to, I don't get a choice in the matter. My Patronus is a duck. That's just how it is. That's just how it is. Rain is saying, don't really expect to go commercial with mine or anything, so if you're thinking of making a community thing, I wouldn't mind. Well, so Rainier, that's yours, so you should definitely, because you can articulate it and keep it, but I feel like doing these as a group thing might be ideal. Okay. Everyone, take your seats. Okay. So, as you all saw the memo that went round, obviously our bosses here at Fictional Longship Studios have recently said that we're going to be rolling into Longship Online. They're really keen about moving into the fantasy online space. I'm sure you all saw the press release that went round. However, our creative director, Mr. Fictional, has decided that we need to take a real focus on our economy. We need to make this a stable game. We need to make sure that we're not spending our eternity fighting inflation, that our economy is player-led, and that maybe we should consider using real-world examples of economic models to fuel what we're doing. Now, I don't know a whole heckin' lot about real economical models, but I know what I like, and I know how to lead us all in a group exercise. So that's what we're gonna do. Matt's like, cough, writes loot boxes, closes GDD. So let me set the scene for you a little bit. The game world of Longship Online, a fictitious blend of Norse, Tolkien, and vaguely Germanic fantasy philosophy, with a little dusting of Celtic lore thrown on there. You will fight dragons and trolls and ogres and orcs. You will embark on adventures with your team of friendos on longships. However, it is all about the thriving living worlds. Everything in this world will be part of a living, breathing economy. We want our tools to come from the earth. We want our swords to be crafted. We want every blade to have its own story. You can tell I'm talking like the press blast now, right? You can all get that. The gods may watch over this world, but it is you, with your hands caked in soot and blood, that shall forge this world. Welcome to Longship Online. Okay. So, today's challenge. We're going to be designing the economy of our world. Now, this is going to be a real challenge, everybody, because we are going to be fighting what makes sense versus what makes fun. Now, again, this is a little bit of a no right answer, because EVE has probably come the closest to creating an in-game stable economy, but they still have to do a lot of work to keep it going. Ultima Online suffers from horrible hyperinflation, as does World of Warcraft, as do most MMOs that allow, economic crafting or trading between players. We're going to have ourselves a heckin' puzzle to get stuck into. So, as per usual, I'm going to create a shared version of this that we can all edit. It'll be suggestions and then edits. Try not to be an ass. Our overall goal will be to come up with some philosophies and some pillars for our design that we will carry through. So things like, I was just doing press waffle there, but do we really want everything in the world to be made by players? And if so, how do we create a healthy economy where everything comes from items that can be respawned? When we are talking about trading, are we talking about, a globalized marketplace like World of Warcraft? Are we talking about a localized marketplace like EVE Online? Are we talking about only person-to-person trading, like removing any kind of global communication? Our team has been given free reign to present the other design teams with additional specs and requests. So if we want a combat system where weapons have to be repaired with materials, we can have it. If we want to have a crafting system where you can only get certain items by, squeezing a dragon's genitals, then we will absolutely have the animation team work on some very, very anatomically correct dragons. We will not be discussing external funding. So we won't be talking about loot boxes. We won't be talking about external microtransactions. We may discuss a system whereby money can be taken out or inserted into the economy, but that's not going to be the focus. We also have the... Oh, Chiat's like, you must do the thing without me noticing. Sorry, Chiat, I don't know why I did that voice. That's not what you sound like. We will... Feckin' hell, I lost my train of thought. Choo-choo, mother hubbards. We will be able to make decisions like, do we want permadeath? How much garbage collection do we want of items that are left on the floor? Things like that. It's gonna be a slog, but I think it's gonna be fun. And again, remember, this is a no wrong answer exercise. This is to get us all thinking. This is to get those synapses firing. And if we come up with something really good, if we come up with anything comprehensive that people can use going forward, then that's heckin' marvellous, yo. So, I have asked DJ Alternative, or Joe from our crew, to jump on in with us. Fucking hell. So, let me get them on the line, because DJ has a small grounding in has some grounding in economics, and I am looking for them in my Discord, and I just realised that you can all see that. Wow, I'm on point today. Where are you bloody at? Aye. Fucking DJ. Where's DJ? Hey, DJ! Alright, so we'll bring DJ in a second, because I don't appear to have him online. So, we are going to be tackling this all together. And Lewis, I actually know about the same place that you're talking about, and I only know that because there was a fake Skyrim Dragon Collector's Edition that went round. I'm not going to say it out loud, but yeah, that was one of those times where I thought I knew everything about I thought I knew everything that was on the internet, and I was very wrong. So, the other thing to bear in mind is that we are going to assume that there are multiple players within this world. Because I think that in a situation where we only have a single player, there's actually we don't need to worry as much about accumulation of wealth by a single individual. Because if our single player wants to dominate the economy and it doesn't kill their experience, it enhances it, then bloody hell, let's let them do it. Unlike, I say the Fable 3 scenario is the only scenario whereby a single-player game needs to have much stronger control on its economy, because if your moral choices are tied to your economic choices, then if your economy is broken, then so is your morality. Like, I chose to do all the good things in Fable 3 because I was a trillionaire by the time I took the throne. I had more money than the crown and the coffers of the entire country because I had absolutely broken the housing market. But that's not funny. That's not fun to do when you're in a large-scale situation. So, yeah. So, oh yeah, and Matt was like, they just left the Xbox on while they had dinner, which, okay, quick side note, because I do like discussing Fable 3. It's not Fallout 3. So, Fable 3, the idea was that you could buy property as a player, but property would pay you rent. I think it was like every 30 minutes or every hour. But the thing was, you buy a couple of houses and then use the rent from those houses to buy your third house, and then use the rent from those 3 houses to buy your third and fourth, or your fourth and fifth. And this would just keep growing exponentially. And by the time I'd finished the first arc of the story proper, like, I was bringing in inordinate amounts of cash. And so Chiat's saying, "Lol, you mean like in real life?" I'm gonna make a request here, just a polite one. Let's leave global politics out of this discussion as best as we can. I can't agree with or stop the incredibly rich scumbags who have an inordinate hold on this world. And yeah, Stomposaurus saying that's how the homeowner system works. Yeah. It's very difficult, but I'm going to ask that we keep it within the realm of video games. If we use real-world examples, we'll try and disconnect singular individuals. Not because I feel like politics isn't important, but because it's a very sad topic. And Dashka, I know what you're saying, that kind of setting us up for failure. Well, it's that essentially we can discuss the effects and try not to... Yeah. Oh! But enough of that. DJ is on. So, my first guest for this evening, even though it is only 1 in the afternoon... Ha 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 ha! Okay. I should have done an audio test beforehand, but whatever! Excuse me, I have this number for a DJ alternative.
Don't know him. Never met him.
DJ! What's going on?
Not much. How about you, Will?
I am just getting into the meat of this and having a great time. Plus, my buddy Matt's in, and he did RPG Tycoon. So, I'm going to have some cracking guests today.
Sounds like it.
Can you all hear DJ okay? And whilst we're chatting... Also, DJ, I wanted to thank you for this one, because you initially put this topic forward to us, and this is my jam, yo.
Yeah, do you mind if I tell you how we got to this topic?
No,
tell
please.
The story anyway?
Tell me the tales.
So, we were talking late night on one of Ket's streams about anime like we usually do on Ket's streams.
Sorry, not sorry.
We got to talking about Log Horizon at one point. And I was saying how they have, while it may not have been the most successful or best designed game in a show, they did have some very interesting design points for an MMO, and one of them was there was this impossible raid that they had introduced in the latest patch, and the reward for beating it was you got access to the actual machine that distributed all the gold to all of the monsters when you killed them. And so you could technically like make a contract, do whatever. You could take all the money. You could take 10 gold if you wanted.
That's super
But the point
cool.
was there was an actual like finite amount, and there was an engine that drove that economic system inside the game.
So, yeah, yes. And then we got chatting about like how would that work? What would that look like? And then you mentioned that so you are studying or have studied economics, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I took a year in combined of micro and macro, and I've just been off and on following it ever since.
Well, that is more than I have in economics or official design training. So there we go. But as I've said, my job is to lead the horde and to help facilitate. So yeah. Today's challenge, I think, is a flavoursome one. So I'm gonna give a couple of examples of digital in-game economies. Sorry, I'm gonna say in-game, not digital, because digital economies implies so much more. So for in-game economies, I think the three flavors that have kind of sprung to mind for me have been like, so you have the World of Warcraft digital in-game economy. God, I'm tripping over my own wording. Where everything is a level of abstract. There's no logistics around the moving of cash. There is some minor taxation, but essentially there's no ceiling cap for cash acquired, and there's a constant influx of coinage dropped from mobs, essentially.
Yeah.
You've got the Ultimate Online philosophy, which has full user crafting of all in-game items. However, it also suffers from the monsters spawning with gold, so the constant inflation. However, there is logistics of commerce. So if I want to sell you my magical sword, I must be next to you to sell you my magical sword. Or I have to physically put it in a vendor, and that vendor can then sell it to you, but you must go to it. And then there's the EVE Online, which is global, or for the sake of that, intergalactic, but global economy, but with logistics of shipping and with character creation. So you have all the visibility of a global economy, but you have the physicality of moving a product from one place to another. Roguelink's asking if I'm familiar with what Wakfu does. Actually, no. I got to put my hand up and say the only Wakfu game I played was the teeny tiny XBLA title they put out, which was gorgeous, by the way, but I never played the proper Wakfu MMO. I'm sorry. Don't hate me. So.
Yeah, I haven't played it either.
Right, so I'm gonna share this open. So get shareable link. Anyone with the link can comment. Copy link. Okay, so I just wanted to give everybody those kinds of example groundings because I'm going to be referencing those games a fair wedge, at least from my perspective. And whilst everyone takes to the document a little bit, so the other things that I was saying is that we've chosen a fantasy project, a purely fictional fantasy game. I chose this because I think there's more of a logical sense between, I get ore out the ground, I turn the ore into ingots, and I turn the ingots into armor. There's a very clear understanding of how that works. As opposed to, say, like starship construction, where it's not immediately understood. Kestrel North is saying, has anyone tried a barter system without gold or currency? I mean, that's that's entirely valid. But I figure I should give a little bit more framing before we get stuck in. Our overall goal here is to try and design a stable economy, but as much as we want it to be stable, we also want it to be fun. So that's where we're going to be having a challenge of sorts. There's going to be a lot of common sense discussion. So, where was it? Chiat was saying on response to the barter systems, in those systems you'll find that that some goods end up becoming the de facto currency. So, fun fact. No, we're not rebooting Endo Team! So, fun fact, Habbo Hotel had no system of in-game economy, so the players created one. So, while there might not necessarily be a currency which we put into place, like, bronze, silver, and gold, players may create their own. So, that's...
Yeah, like prisons. Can you guess what the most common currency in prisons is?
I'm going to go with smokes, because that's what they always say in the movies.
Yeah, except it's incorrect. It's just money. They just get money inside the prison.
Huh. This goes to show how my little knowledge of the incarceration system. So, approve those. Approve those. Bam. Oh, you deleted my... Okay, so the document is open. I guess let us begin. Enough wafflemancy from me. So, I'm going to put forward my suggestions as a framing. Now, you can all, pick this apart or what have you, but I am really keen on the idea of a player-crafted economy. So, you can't buy gear from NPCs, because I think it leads to a very interesting early game, and I think it leads to a more stable economy late game. What are your feels on that, DJ?
Well, there is something you've got to understand about what is and isn't interacting with the economy. You going out, slaying a goblin for crafting parts, and then making your own piece of armor is not interacting with the economy.
Okay.
That is you interacting with the game or the world or however. Once you decide, I want to sell this, that becomes a final good on the market, and that is when you start interacting with the economy.
Okay, but I wouldn't be incorrect in saying that any system that involves us turning resources into objects would end up being something that feeds into the economy. So we'd need to think about how one acquires the means to make armor, how one requires the means to make a sword or a potion.
Yeah, we do need to take those into consideration, but we also have to consider that those are effectively not of any value until they actually get entered into some kind of trading.
Okay. The other thing that I want to... Oh, no, please, go for it.
Or, I was just going to say, start to need to be sold.
Okay. The thing that I was going to add is that for stability's sake, I would put my hand up and suggest that we also remove gold as a random drop. I think that's going to make our life a lot easier.
Yeah, the system I like as opposed to that is you get monster parts and then you can turn them in at a guild or something for gold. And that price can fluctuate depending on how many people are slaying that monster and what is needed.
That's super cool. And one other... Now, this is a purely off-the-wall suggestion, and I'd like everybody's feedback on that before they start adding. So here's an idea. We're quite used to the concepts of rep grinds in MMO. The idea... Oh, actually, no, before I get onto that one, because Matt makes a good point, which is, aren't we already assuming economy by suggesting gold? We are suggesting that there will be a currency. how that currency is regulated and how that currency is distributed is what we want to work on today. Or at least, I mean, please stop me if I'm going off on the crazy train.
Well, one economic system that doesn't necessarily rely on currency would be communism. And I'm not talking about in the philosophic or the political sense. I'm talking about in the classical sense where there is no private property. Everyone owns everything, like the means of production and everything.
Okay.
What we're probably looking for is a capitalist system or something in between capitalist and socialist, which is what most economies in the world are.
Yeah. Well, so again, trying to, as best I can, to keep the political discussion to the door. One thing that someone pointed out to me actually this morning was that the money sinks that we have in real life, a lot of them are removed, and one of those is healthcare. If you are in a fantasy environment or a science fiction environment where one can heal by healing items, then you've removed a large proportion of a money sink. I mean, I grew up in the UK, so we have the NHS, but you know what I mean. And
I mean, we also have healing items, just to a much lesser degree or effectiveness. You have bandages, you have your simple ibuprofen.
True.
Advil or whatever.
I mean, but if you think of those and kind of like those are solutions to temporary debuffs. So the fact that our character has a numerical amount of health that they will want to keep at 100% is something worth discussing. Anyway, so jumping back into chat. Also, fire burns. What ho? I do apologise, Artsy Po. Lovely to see you. Dr. Pepper Pepsi Gaming Guy! What ho? Just established communism, Kappa. Okay. And Hindle's asking, can the currency be neurotoxin? I mean, it's expensive. I'll give you 2 neurotoxins for a pint. Oh, wait.
The problem with neurotoxin being currency is that it's not easily dividable or quantizable. The bar is pretty high on neurotoxin.
So there's a lot of discussion going back and forth about what the currency would be. So what we saw in Ultima Online, which was fascinating, is that when gold hit hyperinflation, because Ultima Online came with a built-in copper, silver, gold system, right? When gold hit hyperinflation, rhymes with moose, bless you. People made their own currency, and they used platinum. And platinum was one of the more expensive crafting materials. But it ended up being the de facto currency for items, because it was like, well, I could give you a feckin' 100,000 gold, or I can give you a platinum. And because platinum in itself had value, it became a good stand-in currency, because it was always in demand. With Habbo Hotel, what it ended up being was furniture. But it was just the object of furniture. So usually basic tables, basic chairs, all the starting stuff. And then it would be well, I'll give you 10 bits of furniture for this specific couch. And someone would be yeah, alright, that's a fair deal. And then they then use those 10 items as currency. Players will find a way, so I don't think we need to worry about what the representation of that is. But if we want to put in a numerical system in core, that should be a decision that we make.
Yeah. We should also consider it's entirely possible that in our fantasy MMO, we can have regions, and those regions can have their own currencies, and those currencies have their own values. They're not all gold, but one is equal to half a gold, or one is equal to 3 times a gold.
Well, so actually, this was something I wanted to talk to you about, DJ. If we localized economy by region, so I was thinking about this because someone excellent was talking to me about the Warhammer MMO that came and went. And they had this concept whereby each faction could be enhanced by doing quests and things like that. What if we allowed users to pay into their regions, into regions they were spending time in? If we kept the economy based in region by region, what we'd end up having is a situation where if we got hyperinflation in one central trading hub, that would mean the value of goods and items in the other areas might increase, which might offset the typical user behavior of this is the one trade hub in our world. You know, this is Britbank, this is Jita or Jitta or however you pronounce it. You know, this is Ogrimmar. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that definitely can happen, but you've got to remember, like, at least in the real world, it's a little bit easier for players of an MMO, but there are people there who can't leave, and then when their money becomes worth nothing and they can't buy anything, that gets real depressing real fast.
Okay. I'm trying to think of how to phrase it, because I mean those kinds of situations are usually caused by conflict or by like economic downturn, right?
Yeah.
And it's highly possible that if we have a region-based area, you know, we'll have situations where a guild or a group or a person moves into an area, invests a lot of time and money into the economy, and then can leave because of real-world situations. And this is what I wanted to say earlier, was that we have to look at what's fun, but we should absolutely take from reality. You know, players eventually have to log off, and players will eventually stop playing. So I think it's... Oh, and before I finish that thought, Fireburns. It's actually our very own DJ Alternative who's joined us on the line. DJ's got grounding in proper economics, so that's, I think, a very useful thing for this discussion. So... and yeah, I think Mr. Ghost is backing up your point. There's that, would the problem be not that people will just stay where their money is? That's not a bad... That's definitely a point to suggest. The other idea that got put forward to me is that improving a town or city, improving the environment or the economy of the area you're in is not done by currency, it's done by objects. So by wood, by swords, by items, you know, that's how you build up the area. But then we need a reason to... Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. It was
I was just agreeing with you.
Chiat suggesting a finite economy where taxes are used to fund money and items dropped by NPCs. What are your feels? What are your feels on a finite economy in an in-game environment? That is what I'd like to know.
I think a finite economy can work really well.
Go for it.
It just has to... It can be finite, but the number should be, like, extremely huge. Like, let's say we only have, like, just as an example, 8 trillion gold coins in the game.
Yeah.
And that's all there will ever be.
Yeah.
That can work. It's something that no one realistically would ever achieve unless something really bad happened. But it also limits the amount of hyperinflation by saying there's just no more out there. Like, you have to figure out a way to deal with the fact that somebody else has the money that you want.
It would create a very unique situation. And, I mean, one of the things that Eve's contended with is that users can acquire ISK by doing bounties, by killing people. Like, there are ways to inject more currency into the economy. But there's also ways to take take money out. So, like, a ship that blows up is a chunk of investment that's no longer in circulation, essentially.
Yeah.
See, now Fireburns has hit upon one of the big problems with multiple users in a situation quite early. And that is, what if some bad word comes on, grinds out half the resources, and then logs off forever? So of our 8 trillion, someone has 4 trillion in their personal account, and then never comes back. So, theoretically, the other 4 trillion in circulation would be worth more, right?
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, it definitely could do that. You could also have a system where by saying, like, effectively, like, someone has been declared dead, and so there's an estate sale of all their stuff. And, like, the money goes to the government or people on the friends list, however you want to do it.
Ooh, that's not a bad idea. Being able to bequeath your items when you pass. I mean, the designer in me is kind of a little bit apprehensive because that almost gives an incentive for users to not come back. As I'm sure we can all express, like, the things that we have and the items we've unlocked and our elements in an MMO are a very good reason for us to return. I'm going to say the danger words. What if we have a system of, brace yourselves, permadeath?
I mean, again, people die in the real world. We have solutions for it.
Economic solutions. Don't resurrect your friends. At least not on a Wednesday. It's just bad form, you know.
But we could also centralize all player monetary storage. Like, say, realistically, someone can't carry 4,000 on them. We could have, like, an actual bank where the bank is only required and only insures up to, in the US, it's about $10,000 worth of your money. And the rest they lend out and give out to people to create more.
Okay.
So that person who logged in, got 4 trillion, and then logged off forever, only 10% of that is ever locked off to them. And the rest is being lent out and recirculated into the economy by the bank.
Okay. Now, this is the point where I feel like my economic knowledge is really hamstringing my situation. Though Fireburns puts out a really good concept, which is, hey, you, adventurer, goblins robbed our bank. Go get them. And that's something that could actually... That's something that actually count. Also, Tal brought up the new player experience, but we'll come back to that one.
Yeah, and your friend Matt brings up banks lending too much and shorting against loans, which maybe we just have the bank be run by NPCs and don't let anyone make speculative investments.
Well, so here's something that I'm going to say. What if we can make the lack of resources engaging? And the rain sounds of Albion kicked in at exactly the right time. So, okay, this is some hecked up thinking, but bear with me here. In the real world, an economic crash is horrible because you can't afford your house, you struggle to buy food, you'll probably lose your job because whoever you work for will go under, or if you own your own company, you won't be able to afford to keep it running. But a lack of resources in a fantasy world might result in a situation where our players have to band together, where they don't have as much, there aren't as many potions in play, there aren't as much like weapons and equipment. We almost create like a supply and demand. Now, what do you all think of that one in chat? Could we create a situation where, by there being less equipment and stuff in circulation, we can make it more engaging, more fun? Because then, we can almost embrace economic crashes and economic downturns. Because I'm going to put my hands up and say, like, aside from survival first-person shooters, I can't think of a game where economic downturn has been a feature in that respect. So Hindle's like the game version of the Great Depression. Stomposaurus adding, the economy could lead to faction warfare, trade wars. One side has too much currency, the others have to raid for more.
Well, yeah, and in the real world, literally, there's a part of economics called the business cycle, which basically details how the feature of recessions and expansions work in economy. Basically, if you want a squiggly line that if you drew a best fit line, it would be a straight line upwards.
Yeah.
Or not a straight line, but like a y equals x, I believe.
Yeah.
So basically, you want that normal graph to be your best fit, and like, so one time it's up at like 20, and then it's down to like 10, but then it's up to like 30, and then down to 15.
Okay. So
it fluctuates up and down cyclically, like that happens. And what you just want to make sure that it trends upwards as opposed to trending downward.
Okay. Because the thing that we've discussed, I'm not saying anything I don't think anyone doesn't already know about, or just looking at the document again in case people want to join us. So, like, we've encountered hyperinflation in in-game economies repeatedly, but I can't think of an economic downturn. Now, this would work better with a game that had some form of action controls rather than turn-based, so that the player isn't as reliant on just pure number output. But that's a theory, not a fact, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So Fireburns is saying, in general, I wouldn't be a fan of finite resources. All in all, I love going out, killing a lot of creatures, stockpiling really cool weapons. I agree with you there, and I think that... So, one thing that DJ brought up before in the discussion and today during this one was the idea of the Monster Hunter philosophy, using monster parts to craft things, using raw resources to make stuff. What we could do is have it so that, you know, most of the gameplay is based around, well, crafting, essentially. So our economy is only really propping up our, you know, one of our core experiences, which is crafting. Have I gone completely
I
in
think
the crazy
we should
train?
make it easily. I think we should make it perfectly viable for people who want just to be a combat guild and sell all the things they get to a crafting guild and get their money that way, as opposed to having to craft everything themselves.
That sounds good to me. So, I also wanted to add that if you've got some cool points you want me to have a look at, do at Viking Blonde, because it makes it really easy for me to see. So I'm trying to think. So are there any other real-world economical concepts or philosophies that you'd like to see more in games? Just while we're adding more to the overall discussion.
Well, I think one thing that isn't, or there are really two things I wanted to bring up. The first one is the simpler one. It's the idea of specialization being good for everyone.
Okay.
Like, I believe games more or less do this on accident rather than on purpose when they do it.
Go on.
And it's basically the idea that if someone can spend their time getting 30 apples and 20 fish, an amount on that curve, in one day, it is good for them to trade with someone who can do, let's say, 10 apples and 20 fish, because comparatively, they can get more apples and fish that way.
Okay, so putting it into like super flavor terms, you know, it is better for me to specialize as a blacksmith and you to specialize as a wizard, and then us to trade our goods, rather than for me to try and be a bit of a shit wizard and a bit of a shit blacksmith.
Correct.
Sorry, what is with me and swears today? I do apologise, one and all. Rhymes with Moose popped a proposal. Rhymes with Moose. Hey, you've been reading my crib notes. So, Rhymes with Moose says a proposal to our project. There is a finite amount of magical energy in the world. If a magic item drops, it takes a certain amount of that energy. That energy can be removed by salvaging the item. and thus preserves the stability of the economy while permitting the discovery and reward of random drops. So, I played a LARP system that had a real problem with power creep, especially in magical items. And so they created the concept that magical items decay over time. Not the item, but its magical effect. And that you can recharge it by sacrificing another magical item. And so each one has a power level between 1 and 10. So, if you want to recharge a power level 10 item, you either need 1 level 10 or you need 5 level 2s. So it means that magic items were consumed to recharge. And plus, the process of recharging them was not quick and simple. You had to actually hold a ritual to do so. So it kept the speed of that consumption down. But that level 10 item would its magical power would decay over time. So it might have a year, it might have 2 years. Or to say it might have 4 events or 8 events. Each time you show up, it decreases in power. They also had a system whereby if you carry too much magical power on you, you explode. Complete tangent, but fun fact, there was a methodology of assassination where you'd stick a magically charged rock in someone's pocket if they were a very high level player, and then you just go get a ref and be like, hey ref, they now have 11 magic power. And the ref would chortle and go, freeze time, you've exploded, everyone in 20 feet takes damage. I mean, yes, you blow your face off, but it's totally worth it.
Oddly enough, a simpler version of that that system you explained is Minecraft's armor and enchantment system. You need experience to fix any enchanted weapons. You can just craft an enchanted sword with a non-enchanted sword. That'll just get you fully healed enchanted sword. If you want to keep its magical enchantments, you have to do it in an anvil with the proper amount of experience or magic in order to make sure it keeps its magical properties.
That's super cool. And that keeps the speed at which the economy is moving slower. Because we know what players are like, because we are also players ourselves. Whatever systems we put in place where we think it'll take a player weeks to do a thing, some mother hubbard's going to work out how to do it in 2 days. So, preparing... When it comes to economies and the speed at which users clear content, I personally would say always keep the 10% in mind. I know designing for the 10% is usually very bad form, but I would think about it. So, DJ, I'm going to jump into chat. Mr. Ghost has said... Could we make an artificial shortage? So let's say our world has 4 regions, and all regions share some resources, and all regions also have resources which are unique to them. And at any one time, only 2 regions are active. Okay, so essentially talking about an economic crop rotation, which is cool. DJ, what are your thoughts on, at least in terms of raw materials in this world, what are your thoughts on spreading those out between multiple regions? I like 4 regions because it feels like we could balance that easier than 3, and it's not quite so red versus blue as just 2.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure you would want to lock off entire areas to people, but we could have just say this is a better time to get X, and this is a better time to get Y instead. How fruits and vegetables go in and out of season.
Chiat's adding, the idea of prestige bands that everyone can craft everything given enough of the grinding stuff. I would like to make a focus at the point where swords are just better for some reason. It might not be mechanically superior. And then Chiat goes into some Englishisms. An M&S sword should have some way of being worth more than an Asda own brand sword. My brain is struggling to come up with a good system, so I'm throwing it to you in chat. How could we create a banding tiering of crafted items? So Ultima had weapons that would break, and then you'd have to reforge them, and the higher the quality. But then Ultima also had a great system whereby if you were a Mastercrafts blacksmith, you could sign your initials, you could sign your name on the weapons. So it would be it's like, here's a katana, and here's a katana crafted by Will, and you'd be like, wow, Will is, as I Caught Fire once put it, a bit of a schnitzel blacksmith. Read into that how you will. And Rhymes of Moose was saying, jumping off that bit, you could have containers of magic energy that could be used to do magic things, like recharge a magic item, craft a magic item, etc., which can act as currency as well, making everything a player will want to do an intrinsic currency sink. Well, very yes, currency sinks are good. Rhymes and Moose, can I suggest blockchain now? No! Back in the blockchain box! Although... Feck. Okay, and Hindle with... This isn't a sword. Shrink! This is an M&S sword. The idea of unique items using blockchain check is interesting. But then again, does it really matter? Like, if we can have a system where every item is unique, or we can... Yeah. We don't need to say blockchain specifically, but we can keep that in mind. It doesn't necessarily need to be a part of our economy just yet, but yeah. Reflective Gamer is suggesting, what if you capped skill? So you could only have 3 master blacksmiths per zone, but the skills degrade over time, so there's less of a chance of advance. That's a hard one, because the idea of filling a role in an area is always great, but we know players don't like degrading skills. That's always a tricky one. And then DJ's saying, I'm currently trying to figure out why my headphones don't want to connect. I'll be back momentarily. I might have to restart. Okay, everybody. DJ's not currently on the line, so it's just us. I'm running off site. So I'm going to link it again. Please jump on into the document. I guess our core philosophies on this one. Let me just approve those. Our core philosophy is to create a fun, self-sustaining economy. Our game design philosophy is that this is an action-based MMO. I think we agreed at least action-based, in the same way that like Ultima Online is action-based. And compliment camp with just the 30 of us. Oh! I Caught Fire. See, that's why we hang out together. That's bloody brilliant. So I Caught Fire once, articulating off of Reflective Gamer, says, what if the skills don't degrade, but you possess a title as official master blacksmith, and it needs to be renewed by winning some sort of challenge, like most number of items crafted. Players can hold rank within towns and cities, and that denotes... Oh, that's so good. Because then, if a player ceases to interact with the environment, theoretically there are others waiting to take their place. And it would encourage players sometimes to go to towns, areas, or factions that aren't as highly populated, because there's more stuff going around. Like, there would be nothing stopping users from travelling from one area to another. So we wouldn't have anything that stops you from joining another town. But because of the differentiation in currency, you wouldn't be able to take any liquid assets from one bank to another, because it's a different currency. But you might be able to buy items and bring them with you. Rhymes and Moose also adding, the other idea is that if your legend as a blacksmith grows based on things you've done with weapons you've created or reforged, that would be bloody cool. So Rhymes and Moose, the one thing that I would like to add to that, if it's okay and if the group approves, is that improving an item to its legendary state takes more time and resources than making 2 simplistic swords. So, okay, here's the broadsword. The broadsword requires like 5 ingots, some wood, some leather, whatever. To make the legendary broadsword doesn't require 10, it requires 20. So there's more of a resource sink for item improvement than there is for mass production. the other thing that I would suggest is that if we wanted to turn like legendary broadsword into my shoe, for those of you that don't know, my shoe is the legendary weapon of the longship. So our only mythical item so far in the lore of this stream. That you would not only need to bring in the magical elements to enchant it, but you'd also need to like reinforce it or reforge it or do something involving the addition of more items. So again, just keeping it from just being a flat upgrade system. Hindle says, what about the mythical backpack? Can any one person truly climb to be the mythical backpack? Mr. Ghost saying, my shoe's opposite is called opposite shoe. Oh, I need to stop doing that. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Bad will. So, yeah. I mean, the gameplay loop is a standard fantasy affair of sorts. But I tell you, not having DJ on the document tapping stuff out is making this very difficult. Because I don't want to subject you all to the tappity tapping of my keyboard far too much. I caught fire once saying, my boot will kick my shoe's butt. I think, you know, the idea was that it came from, I'll beat you with my shoe. And then my shoe was the name of the fantasy blade. We'll definitely come up with something first. I think like glove slap. Although glove slap feels like a shield. Like, bombf, glove slap. So, let's review. We have 4 regions, and we have considered giving each of those regions its own currency, with a flat amount of currency in each region. Is everyone okay with that? Is everyone on board? Am I going off the rails? And Chiet saying some kind of currency like magic or effort that is earned and spent in a very analog way. You don't need to add it when you craft the sword if you want a mundane one, but but the more you add, the more magical or unique it is. Oh, Chiet, that's I don't know what you all think, but because we were playing Game Dev Story yesterday, Game Dev Tycoon. And research is accumulated just by doing and then is spent. If you as a player gain... you called it effort, and I kind of like that because maximum effort. And Deadpool's out this week. So effort is something that you acquire. The idea that it's like it's your free time or it's your mind's focus. You know, it's you thinking about what you're going to be doing in those in the wee hours of your... early morning or your coffee break whilst you're taking a break from the forge, because there will be coffee in this game. So feckin' help me. And tea as well. One region has coffee, one region has tea. Don't know what the other two get. I think I'll get back to you on this one.
Boo!
Ah! Welcome back.
Yes.
See,
my headphones decided to cooperate.
Nice. I Caught Fire Once is also suggesting that the currency might be a common crafting material as well. What are your thoughts on that? On currencies based on usable or consumable items?
I mean, it's definitely possible. It's definitely a thing we've done in the past.
Yeah.
But I think it doesn't reflect how we view money today. We view money as the means of how to trade, as opposed to something valuable to trade, and backing it with a usable material seems to like take a step backward and be a little counterintuitive at the moment.
Well, so to my understanding, the reason why we moved away from money being based on a thing that is worth is because that thing isn't always that thing's value isn't guaranteed. We've learnt this as a race, that
correct.
The value of gummy bears changes, and a gummy bear based economy just isn't going to hold up, because if there's a shortage of gelatin one year, then gummies go up. But if there's cow's knees for days, then gummies are worthless. And honestly, I'm thinking about gummy bears right now. I don't know why you're put up with my nonsense. I really don't. Okay. So,
my point wasn't that it's a step like we can't do it. I was just saying like people don't really think of money in that way anymore.
Okay.
They think of it as numbers on a screen that we use as a means to get what we want, as opposed to something that inherently has value, like when the US dollar was tied to gold.
So I'm going to change Gavin's suggestion from dimensions to regions. Sorry. Thank you for that, DJ. I noticed the proposal was separate dimensions with different amounts of resources. For us, really, at least in the conceptual stage, we were putting forward whilst you were fixing your headphones that there are four regions essentially, and each region has its own currency, and using that as a bedrock for our design from there. Like I said, we get to tell the other design teams what's what. Our bosses at Fictional Longship Studios have put our design team in charge. So if we decide there are 4 regions, then some poor writer has to come up with a reason why there are 4 regions. You know what I'm saying? Also, fire burns. Yeah. And then I caught fire once saying, if we require the money is that money is required to craft everything, we can guarantee the value of money. It also doesn't need to be treated as a crafting resource the same as others. You could just have it that it costs X gold to craft Y. Alternatively, it would feel like a barter system, which I always enjoyed in the early Fallout games. I enjoyed that in the early Fallout, and I don't want to have to actually think about the logistics of a system that can real-time work out how much an item is worth in barter, but I don't have to. That'll be programming's job.
Well, yeah. And the way we, at least currently in the real world, keep money from going, like, just completely bottoming out is the fact that it at least the US dollar inherently has value, because you have to pay the US government in it for your taxes. So it's never going to be zero. It's always going to be worth something.
Yeah. So I want to articulate back to the point I was suggesting earlier, that if we have 4 regions, and so we assume that each region's going to have at least one major city and like a handful of towns, maybe some villages as well. Taxing players sucks. Like, no one wants to work their tiny ass off and then have a bunch of their money taken away from them. And we know that while taxes aren't great, they do serve some very good real-world functions in terms of money not being worthless. So
yeah, and we can do it. Like, if you notice, like, as a consumer, if you notice that you are getting taxed for everything, then the government is doing a bad job of taxing you. It's why the Boston Tea Party and the American Revolution happened. It's why...
And you got support from the French.
Well, but it started out because...
I kid.
There was an excise tax on newspapers, and those papers came with a sticker saying, "We are taxing you, you are paying more," because the British government wants to. If you're ever going to tax somebody, it's going to end up falling on the consumer. Like, the consumer is almost always going to pay that tax. But if you tax it on the producer side, then they almost never see it. They just see it as like, oh, the price of X went up a couple cents or $1.
So, I guess what I was trying to throw in is creating a system whereby our users are paying some sort of taxation through their play that doesn't feel like ass and butts. One thing that was proposed to me today is that the idea that villages, cities, towns need upkeep, need maintenance, and that by paying into those you can gain into a rep system. So while there isn't a bottomless request for resources, you have the option to pay into a town or city that you are involved in, and that will boost your standing with them. I thought that might be a good way of essentially taxing the user and rewarding them simultaneously. You're taxing them for the wear and tear of the city they spend the most amount of time in, and for, you know, like, there might be like cooler features that you can get if you reach like a certain like donation goal with your town or things like that.
But like we've spent a lot of time talking about the individual player and a little bit on the government of our fictional game, but we haven't really talked yet about, like, let's say a bunch of high-level players get together and form a guild or a business, and how those operate in our economy. Those are the types of people who, if you tax, they will pay as they're selling it.
That's very true.
Like they have the cash to participate in the economy. And if you just tax them, then they'll be like, oh, this thing now costs 4 gold instead of 3 because of reasons. And the consumer is much more likely to buy into that than you being like, oh, this costs 3 gold plus 1 tax.
Okay. I mean, we know from user experience that we've seen in other things that players are fine with being taxed as a group. Players don't like being taxed like on a one-to-one. But we've seen on, you know, in like EVE Online, we've seen in World of Warcraft, even in feckin' MechWarrior Online, like, player groups, player guilds are, they are a large proportion of the experience of an online game, because, you know, guilds tend to be what prop these projects up. So yeah, we could definitely do our taxation at that level. I mean, Chiat's saying, how about guilds are player-created towns? The guild town pays a collective tax to the king of the region they're set up in. True. Or, you know what else, Chiat? And this is just, I'm throwing this out there, but the size of your guilds denotes the amount you have to pay. As if, like, you know, so if all of us band together, Heckin' Matt, can I buy the town, then manage the town, then build things in the town? Do you mean like some kind of management sim? Like some kind of, maybe, tycoon game? Alright, Matt, I'm linking your feckin' game. Sorry, I'm just... Don't look at how many games I have! Don't look!
It is a lot.
It's like 1,537. Don't look at me! Alright, so everybody, that's Matt's title, and we'll be getting Matt on in a little bit to chat. So, yeah.
Matt says, oh no.
Hell yeah. But I think what you're saying is... it's very, very important, and... Feck, where was
I think it would be interesting to, like, not tax individuals who want to sell something, but if once they cross the barrier to, I want to get people in on this, and I want to create a guild or a business, then that's the entry point at which they start being taxed for producing goods.
Yeah. Also, I don't think I'm going to have any pushback on this one, but I think that we would do, like, selling and trading in a marketplace in each area, but I don't think we would do it person to person, just out of... just from player experience. Like, I love the idea that you can only ever buy your items from a player, but what happened on RP servers that I used to play on was that you'd log on, and the one person who can feckin' fix your sword and sell you a potion isn't on. And so you're just flopping around being like, I just want some... I want a red mana potion, and my sword's in like 3 pieces, just... So the user experience isn't great in that situation. Yes, Chiat saying, player-owned shops with NPC trader. Now, the reason why I would say that every town would have a market is so that you're not running around desperately trying to find a particular guild setup. Or maybe with that... Okay, what do you all think? Should we have one market where all the prices of that town are displayed for all the items, a la EVE Online? Or should we go for something more in flavour where you have to find a person that sells a thing? I know that means that then marketing and, and awareness of a thing becomes a problem, but then so does looking around for a bargain. That could be kind of cool.
I don't see why we can't have both.
Ooh. Well, I mean, because if we have both, we know that users will use the market system to look through the quickest one.
Well, yeah, there's no reason they can't find like something cheap or easy to get. But if they want like something that's like harder to find or just something in much larger quantities, they're going to have to go to like a guild's storefront or warehouse and like barter with them.
Rhymes and Moose is saying, for the sake of making crafting work well, I think it should matter who makes your stuff. That's a pretty good discussion. Like, we could do that on a guild by guild. If we articulated off of what, DJ, you were saying earlier about specialization over generalization, then guilds would obviously try and have a wide range of different skill sets. So, like, to make a magic sword, you need a jeweler, a blacksmith, an enchanter, and a mage all working together. So the crafting as a group would become more of a focus. So it'd be like, our guild can't be called the Longship. What would our guild be? I know. We are the Knights of Caffeine. So the Knights of Caffeine have crafted my shoe, and that's taken like multiple members working together to craft a thing. And Beardale is saying also have yet to play a multiplayer game where the inflation is not constantly driven up prices. So if anyone has got an example of the opposite, I would love to learn about said game. Same. Beardale, I'd love to know. And I love the idea of a potential economic crash being fun and good. Like, Mr. One Ghost is annoyed I didn't name our guild the Short Ship. But the game's called Longship Online. You can't be the Warcraft Guild of Warcraft. Or some craft. And then...
what about the Guild of All Craft?
Alpha the Deluge just says, but why not? And Greenfire's like, humble life, what have I missed?
But yeah, basically the idea would be like, why would a guild go and set up in a market where everybody else is when they have enough renown to just make people come to them instead?
Yeah, but also if you're looking for cheap, down and dirty, you're going to want to go to the market rather than sitting in like a boutique. Like, I just need armor and a sword. So, I mean, that would feed into something where you drop items on death. Oh, and before everyone freaks out that I'm saying that, like, you drop all your items on death and, you know, one of the things that... I'm sorry I'm leaning so heavily on Ultima Online, but one of the things that was really interesting about that is that weapons of a certain level stayed with your spirit, stayed with your soul, because they were so magical that they would they'd stay with your spirit when you died. So the idea is that my shoe will only be a magical enchanted blade for as long as we keep it upright, but it could stay with us. So the cost of maintaining my shoe is not small, and is more than, say, replacing... So, what I was saying while you were on the headphone break is that I feel that upgrading from broadsword to my shoe wouldn't be just the same amount of resources again, that it would end up being quite a large amount of resources, quite a large jump. So that a magical broadsword requires as many as like 4 times the same amount of resources as a regular broadsword. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then the maintenance of that to keep it is quite high.
What if instead of just letting them keep those high-level magical items, maybe they just become part of the loot that you can get from beating the raid boss? So you don't get it back, but you get a chance to retrieve it from whatever high-level enemy you lost it to.
That's not a bad point. The idea that magical weapons crafted at such a high level become part of the world, I think that's kind of cool. And plus, we could do similar to like Dark Souls messaging system. We could let people name their weapons and their equipment from like a drop-down combo. So, okay, admittedly, we get a lot of use both hands, and but I mean, this is flavor stuff. So going back to the thing you were saying about articulating items towards raid bosses. So here's my worry: we create hyperinflation of items. So those mystical items we can make sure they stay in the world, stay in the economy. But if we have it so that we essentially all those cheap broadswords, those need to either be consumed or be consumed, be destroyed, or got rid of. Because if the ore that comes out the ground respawns, then there's a potential that we could create, well, infinite blades. So I'm picking on swords as an example because I played a blacksmith. Yes, I'm talking about Ultima Online a lot. I'm sorry.
Maybe we just encourage players to try to keep the sword they have instead of worrying about what if there are too many in the market. Like, we make it easier for them to repair and make it more costly for it to have broken and them needing to go get a new sword. So effectively lowering demand.
Okay. But then
so even if there are an infinite amount of swords, who's buying them?
Essentially, they become our grey items of our economy. So easy to make, cheap to acquire, but ultimately a stepping stone for better things. And
yeah,
we could do diminishing return on resources so that you can turn an object into its base components, but at like half the amount. So you only get like 2 ingots back from a 5 ingot broadsword.
And maybe, who knows, if we have the game running long enough, we could just do an evolving economy where, like, at the start of it, there is a finite amount of, like, copper, tin, bronze, aluminum.
Yeah.
Then as you get further in, those get exhausted, but we add in new ways to find ore and better ways to, or more different kinds of ore and better ways to process them.
Or more ore might be my favourite phrase of the day. So jumping back into chat. So, oh god, you're moving real fast here. So Greenfire is saying, what about a goods trading based economy with traditional crafts, humble life? Greenfire, I think the humble life icon keeps failing on you, which is brilliant because it just sounds like humble life is your anime kind of catchphrase. Believe it, humble life.
You know why Naruto said believe it in the anime all that time, right?
Because he believed it.
No, it's because they were covering up. It was because they were covering up all the swearing he did in the Japanese version.
Well, he had his little... I can't pronounce it, but he had his little catchphrase in the Japanese one.
Yeah, but the majority of the time in the American dub, it was to cover up swearing.
I'm so sorry you had to put up with the American dub. I'm sorry for your loss. Okay. But this is not the place. It's not the time. Otherwise, I'll just start quoting Hellsinger Bridge for like an hour, and everyone already gets enough of that. Anyway, so Mr. Ghost is saying, what about just having players pick what they get to keep? So each player has 2 slots Whatever is in those slots, they cannot drop. Everything else gets dropped upon death. That's not a bad idea, Mr. Ghost. And if we went with an idea of like focusing on maintenance and upkeep over like recreation of items, then yeah, we could create a system whereby you're gaining personalized equipment as you're working through, but you're spending the majority of your resources, your time and your resources, keeping your special thing going. So you might have a cheap sword on the quiet whilst you're using your badass one.
And I Caught Fire one brings up a point I was thinking of, which is, what if we add in soul binding, which is the idea that it is bound to your soul and just like, but it is something you have to add on specifically.
Well, soul binding's a tricky one, because while I was suggesting it for the mystic items, those mystic items would have to be maintained to stay magic, essentially. The problem with soul binding is it really does feed into hyperinflation, because it means the people who have the most spend the least. And again, we're not bringing any real world politics into this, but it's the idea that if you can afford to have an item soul bound to your character, then you should be the one who's paying the most to have your stuff replaced, because you have the largest amount of resources. But it just ends up with people getting, at least in Ultima, it ended up with people having full soul-bound sets of of Dark Ducinar armor and these like beautiful weapons that they never replace because they hit the pinnacle and then soul-bound them.
At that level, we really want them to. We want to encourage them not to buy single items of power, but we want to encourage them to buy in bulk and like be movers in the economy, as opposed to just individual people who come in, sell their stuff, and leave. We want to encourage them to be like a larger part of the economy.
True. So making sure that the maintenance and usage of those items suits the player's financial power banding, I think, is important. Or suits the power banding of what their guild can support or their group can support. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, again, I am not against having it so that people keep a large proportion of their items on death. It's just the soulbound system is complex. And I saw the soulbound system was one of the main reasons why Platinum was introduced as a resource, because Platinum was used to make the super high tier soulbound stuff. So, yeah.
Well, I'm not saying like a soulbound item can't break, but it just doesn't get lost upon death. So you still need to like pay the enormous amount to maintain it, whatever resources you use to make it.
I also love the idea of what you were saying earlier about raid boss distribution, because going back to an RP server I was on for a while, so I jumped around a little bit. I tried being a human for a bit, and I tried being a drow for a bit. And as a drow, I managed to get this sweet katana. I was playing as, I can never pronounce it right, the Kensi or Kensai. So I got no armor, but I got a really sweet sword. And, I was trying different races on the server. And one of these days, I'll bore you all with the drow setup, because we actually managed to set up a store inside. This was a big deal, because we were all male drows and we were allowed to have our own store. Like we were breaking boundaries. We were striving, but we would resell all the healing potions and clothes that we got from killing people in the tunnels. So it was all just like basic adventurer gear, but because the city was so small, people needed it. So we made a bit of it. Anyway, I jumped back to the humans again, and so the GMs were like, okay, you got this magic weapon, we don't want to take it out of the game because we know you're having fun with it. What we're going to do is we're going to make a quest line for you to reacquire it as a human. And I'm like, cool. And I'll be honest with you, it took me a good couple weeks to find out where it was, get the resources and the people to come back me up to fight to get through it. But that was one of the best experiences, to the point where I'm now telling, oh bloody hell, there's like nearly 40 people here. Okay, when did that happen? To telling all of you about this tale. So if our very realistic economy pours into great stories like this. Like, I guess that's one of the reasons why I get so excited about this. If we can make it so the things in our world have value, then they mean more to our players. The sword isn't just a sword, it's their sword. And if we can do that, and then have it fold flavour in, then it means something. Oh, Gilbot. Also, what-ho! Gilbot says, you have value to us, Will. Oh, that's lovely. Sorry, DJ, I went off on story time there.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick that I linked in chat the Alice Maz writing.
The Minecraft economy write-up.
Yeah, it's real interesting.
I highly recommend everybody give that a read because it's feckin' fascinating. Okay, let's just agree to those. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about what could possibly be a currency. And if anyone wants to come up with names for the regions or what the 4 different currencies would be, I think, yeah. Dell's saying, I think Will's hair is worth something. Because I'm worth it. That got weird. Right. I tell you what, DJ, can I leave you for 2 seconds just to chat to these wonderful people? Because, as you will all see, sadly, my coffee cup runneth empty. And this is a discussion that needs coffee, not tea. Coffee.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here drinking a delicious Coca-Cola. Taste the feeling.
Did I mention we got sponsored? Sadly, we are not sponsored. Oh, man. That would be great. Get sponsored to do this. Right, so let me just quickly turn on the BRB needs tea. Okay, everybody. I'll be back in just a second. I'm just going to quickly refill my cup. Right. Oh, actually, I should leave my headphones on because I'm talking to you as well, DJ. Yeah, I'll be back in just a second, dude. And yeah, to you lovely, lovely folks, you should do the same. Refresh your tea, type your thoughts into the document, and I'll be back in just a second. I'm gonna get some tea. I'm mildly confused with what I do.
Whoever this Magnus person is, I feel like you're writing references into the document that I just don't know, but it all seems way too quick to not be a reference to something specific. Chat, I think speculations and economic simulations like that are a bit too costly and a bit too much for our game. Though it would be really interesting, like, if we do have some kind of evolving game to eventually get to the point where we introduce a stock market and speculative investments. yes, a stock market might develop organically fire burns, but we don't want to institute things like index funds and day trading and stuff that happens on the microsecond, where you want to buy your building as close as you can, so that way the information physically has to travel shorter distances, thus you can make the trade faster than anyone else. So we wanted to have 4 different currencies, Beadora, because we want more interesting economic interactions. So not that we're trying to like introduce more because one got hyperinflated, but we want them to have value in relation to each other. So like shadow energy can be traded for 2 life energy, but only half of wind energy. And we want those prices to fluctuate and not be static. Like if I were going to England or France.
I've only gone and bloody done it. See, this is why, everybody, it's good to take breaks. Because you come up with some cracking ideas. Dude, I've got some great ideas.
Alright, hit me.
So, while we don't necessarily have to increase stat damage, we steal some ideas from bloody CSGO. A well-crafted sword keeps track of what you kill. The better the crafted sword, the more stats you can keep track of. It becomes your blade more and more so. So, how many goblins you slay or wolves you put down, or, like, for PvP, the names of your kills. A highly crafted sword, you can etch detail into it, thus building even more into the "this is mine."
Yeah, and did you ever get a chance to check out Tinker's Construct, the mod from Minecraft that I said was very much like your Homestuck fantasy for weapon crafting?
No.
Alright, I only bring it up because I think it would be an interesting way to approach weapon crafting in this game, which is you can make a weapon out of almost anything, but those weapons have like specific parts you need to put together. And like if you're using a metal, you need to melt it down and pour it into a cast. And each of those different materials have different attributes, like something will break blocks faster, or something has a % chance to drop you experience.
Okay.
And you can even modify those, like once they're complete you can like specialize it to mine as fast as you want, or have like extra damage.
Oh, sorry, I missed Compliment Cap heading out, so good night, Compliment Cap.
No. Good night, Compliment Cap.
So the other thing I thought of, and I promise you all, like, you know me, you've hung out with me, I'm not just a horrendous weeb, but so there was an RPG called Septerra. Was it Septerra Core? Septerra Core? Anyway, so it had a card-based magic system where you could combine cards to do different kinds of things. I propose that we implement a card-based magic system. Now, hear me out. Magic would obviously be a stat that people train, and the higher their stats in it, the more damage they can do with magic, or the different kinds of cards they can use. However, To forge one of these cards, you must take items and objects, put them together, and then consume them all to form magic. So if you want to do a wall of swords, you're going to need a shitload of swords. You see what I'm saying? A healing spell needs healing items compressed.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
So there we go. I've taken... see, this is where it's good to, draw inspiration from loads of places. CSGO and terrible CCG anime. That's where I'm taking my ideas from. Plus, I really loved Cultsep. Well, it's okay.
Now, the question is, if we do have, Rhymes with Moose is proposing we have, different attributes of magical energies as currencies.
Yeah.
If we were to have consumable cards, how do you think the magical energy currency would affect magic use and consumption?
Well, that would be the additional limiting factor. Like paying a blacksmith to repair your stuff, you need some of that magical energy to forge these cards. You see what I'm saying? Oh, hang on. What just happened? Oh no, we're all good. That just moved down. I'll wait till... Oh wow. Magnus is coming up with some cool stuff. Man, Longship Online starting to take shape as a world. Now, let me just...
Yeah, the problem is you don't really want your currency being able to be used as a thing individually, because then it takes basically that currency out of the economy. And sometimes that's a good thing, but when you're using it as a common everyday crafting material, it goes a bit too far.
Well, I mean, what fucking hell, what's it called? What Lorien Trust and a few other systems do is they limit the amount of magic per region, which keeps the PvP from getting too over the top. So a small region with a small amount of players means a few of those... What just happened? Should be okay there. All right, sorry. I'm just having to. The document had a little bit of a grump at us there. All right, hang on. So Magnus and Rhymes, before you guys stop. Let me accept everything first, because there's a battle going down. Greenfire is asking, what about food and beverage as a worldwide economy? I don't know about as an economy type, but definitely as part of the economy. So, NPCs' need for food could become a thing. Sorry, so jumping back into your question about magic being a resource. So, it's like saying that magic doesn't move around like a currency. It's not a physical object, but there is only so much magic per region. So, if you have some, you spend it, it goes back into the regional pool and is then distributed. I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it. So, each region has a power of 3,000. There can be 3,000 amount of power in that area. If I spend 1 power to make my magic card, then that is 1 power that's in the ether until that card is destroyed upon use. Does that make sense?
Chat is mad because you apparently stole their idea.
Did I?
Because their message was too long for chat.
Oh no!
But yeah, that makes sense, but the problem is when you start using that as a currency to, say, buy an apple or a burger or whatever you want. And that's what's effectively being proposed here.
But magic as a currency?
Yeah. So if it's something that can be used for magic crafting, but is also a currency,
but then
you run into the problem.
But then are we back in the point whereby if our currency is based on an object for crafting? So
Yeah.
our current at that point, like if we take the disambiguation, if we take it into disambiguation, it is a currency that has a function, and it's a currency that's consumed by use. So it's kind of similar to maybe not gold, but maybe like rice as a commodity of value.
Yeah. And like it's always good. It's good to have something as a backing for a currency, but since this is a game, we can essentially be the government and say it will always have some value because we demand that things get bought and or paid in this value in this currency, so we wouldn't have to worry about it.
True.
Like,
also,
essentially hitting zero.
Like, I mean, it really depends what we want to do with our magic system at this point. But magic, we've said we want things like magic blades and stuff like that. The amount of magic you have is probably equivalent to, like, unless we remove a magic system, unless we don't have a magic system, but I'm trying to think how to phrase this. God, that's becoming my fucking catchphrase. Oh, let me take a moment. By the way, I'm having the best time doing this with everybody. This is feckin' fun. So, magic can denote power. If we have a magic system that allows for spell casting or for magic item creation, if magic items are more powerful than regular items, then we have created a system whereby the more economically sound your region is, the more powerful it is. Not just to the point of having more resources, but having physically stronger equipment. I don't know how I feel about that one. Because we'd need to keep a much, much closer grip on it. So, like, if we take the... I only know this because, again, I've worked on Shogun. But the idea of an economy based on rice essentially is the amount of people that you can field in combat. Because you can afford to feed them, right? So, if you have more rice, you are just stronger than your opponents. If you have more magic than your opponents, you are just more powerful. And I wonder if that's a system. Obviously, wealth denotes power because you can afford to have better equipment and you can afford to have more people on your payroll. But I feel like at least that's a step of disambiguation. Not a step of disambiguation. A step removed. But this only comes from assuming that our game has a fair wedge of players. The Lorien Trust system of balancing magic it works very well because there's only so much power per faction. So it does mean that we don't end up with the Warhammer Online thing where one faction is just phenomenally stronger than the others. And, I mean, they had Order and Chaos, but, if you weren't one of the popular badass factions, you're going to get rolled. You're going to get rolled a lot. Do you know what I'm saying? Have I gone off the crazy?
Yeah, what if we go with that? I'm just articulating on that, but let's say, like, you can only draw magical power at a rate of at X over time. So, and, like, even at high levels, you can only draw magic at X over time, but you can, like, research, and I mean, like, legitimately, like, take a very long time and research better ways to extract that magic from the region. And so, and essentially, like, make it so, like, there's no definitive endpoint, so one can rise up and take over, but then someone else can research a better way of draining that magic.
I feel like with this we're straying into the possibility of the hyperinflation just offset. So, if you're able to if you're able to draw more magic from the system, then you're able to increase a method by which you're getting more and more. The reason why I liked a magic system whereby resources were consumed was that it keeps everything flowing. Whereas Yeah. So I personally would move away from magic as a currency. I think we can use magic to balance our economy, not as part of it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If magic governs the power, then things that have magic in them are of value, and we can control how much magic is in the system without having to tweak the economy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
This is just a suggestion. Like, what do peeps in chat think whilst I'm waffling on? And whilst people are responding, so Greenfire says, here's what they did in ancient Egypt. They paid their taxage in a percentage of grain, and you were paid in grain and beer. Will that be a good base? Could we have it localized and centralized authority to keep things stabilized? So Greenfire, we decided. We were discussing that we think that the taxation should come at the group level rather than at the individual level, so that guilds are where the most amount of taxation happens. Now, obviously, that's passed on to the consumer, as DJ was saying earlier. But where did my train of thought go? But it's the concept that we don't make the individual beholden to any localized taxes. In fact, we keep individuals able to move around more. But once they join a guild, that essentially ties them to a town or a village or a city, and that's where a large amount of their pay comes from, their taxation comes from. And the thing about the Egyptian method, much like the Japanese method, is that it needs our players to eat. So if we were going to have a system whereby people were being paid in a consumable amount, we would need to have something that the players need to consume daily, and something to kind of and a system by way that's reintroduced. That might be a little bit out of my skill set. Like, that might be a bit hardcore, but what are your feels on that, DJ?
I mean, it's possible, but I still think it's better to have money as a way we trade goods, as opposed to money as a representation of a good.
So I'm sorry, I'm just jumping back into the thing. I'm approving it, but so Gavin was suggesting that there might be a starting region in this one. What we would need to do is find a reason for players to be distributed amongst the 4 regions as evenly as possible. Obviously, there's going to be one area that's more popular, but then because we have economical reasons for players to move their groups around, we probably wouldn't have a starting region in the tradition. It does mean that we'd be reliant on players to take other players through a lot of the new game experience, but that's another challenge. We could do something similar to like the starting dungeons of a lot of MMOs, where you then choose your starting region after that, or that is to say, you choose the region you start in. But yeah, so yeah, just add in those. Is Matt still with us? Is he still chilling and illing? So DJ, what I might do is, because I have your company for the rest of the show, right?
Yeah.
I might grab Matt for a little bit just to talk about his experiences, because he created a game around this very concept, but in single player. So I'm going to bring Matt on for a little bit, and then I'll bring you back on once we've added some more to the document, and we'll start bringing this together, because there's so many cool ideas that are popping up. And I'm just, you know what? I'm going to say it now. I'm having a fucking brilliant time. Like, this is the kind of shit that I love to... why am I swearing so much today? This is the kind of stuff I love to talk about at the pub. Like, crafting a world, crafting these ideas, trying to bring it all together. Like, yeah. And before I pass over, so Greenfire is saying, we could use The Witcher as an example for a magic system that you're milling around with. The chapter of sorcerers. Well, the only bit of my magic system that I would want to carry through, if the group allows it, is the idea that a lot of resources go into making a spell, and that a spell is consumed when it's cast. But they're non-standard, so, like I said, Wall of Swords creates a wall, a protective shield against your foes. but you need to put swords into the spell to bring it together. So yeah, Dashkor says so potions. It could be potions, spell pages. I like cards because I like hoarding magic cards. Don't judge me. But it's about how it comes together. Well, I mean, Dashkor, it's not that they're mechanically potions. They're whatever we say we are. It's our world. We get to decide the law in this place.
Yeah. One thing before you bring Matt on.
Oh yeah, go for it, dude.
On the topic of like introducing new players, I think an interesting thing we could do is give an incentive, like let's say quarterly, like every 3 months, we say to the biggest guilds, hey, if you run a training camp for any player who wants to under, let's say, level 40, we will subsidize 10 or 20% of what you spend. So we're paying them a little bit to teach the newer players their tips.
That's way cool. Now, if we're completely blue skying this, like let's say we have a crazy cool budget for this, I'd love to implement a system whereby we don't just have NPCs running these towns and cities, where they're not quite players, not quite moderators, but that nice in-between bit. They're not quite a storyteller doing full in, but they're essentially playing a role as part of the game, and then they're rewarded for it. I'd really like to see something like that. So then the new player experience is something that's being cultivated in each town and each village.
Yeah, and it should always be in the best interest of like the large guilds to train up the new players, so that way either they have people who they can sell to properly, or more trained workers who can go work for them.
Yeah. Actually, so, and I'm gonna jump on this one before we grab Matt, because I still need to. Matt, I need to find out what your Discord is. So Dashkor was bringing up an interesting point that I think is always good to articulate on discussion. And this isn't an attack by any means, but Dashkor was saying mechanics are not art. You described potions mechanically. The models the player sees can be whatever. Potions are consumables that you load resources into for one-time effects. Well, I mean, potions, like even the name potions is a concept that's existed in fantasy, but it's essentially ours to craft. The mechanics are narratively, the mechanics are what we say they are. Now, we want something that our players can get behind, so we don't want a pure summoning system around yelling into a chicken's gob. But we can decide what the magic system is. Like, we can decide that it's purely runic, like that to cast these things you carve runes onto the floor, and that's the only method of which magic works. But that the chalk for each piece of oh, hang on, you're going to see the back end of my Twitter. Whoa! That was some skill moves there. But the chalk is the condensed objects that are made, like through a magical process. A blade is crushed down until it forms a grey piece of chalk. I mean, it's probably not very healthy to breathe in. And that's what's great about video game design. It's the programmer's job to work out how that works behind the scenes. And it's the writer's job to work out the why. It's our reason to work out the experience, the feeling. You know, the poor writers are going to have to come up with like 200 pages of backstory to explain our chicken gob yelling chalk-based system. So, yeah, sometimes it's good to be able to disengage from the narrative reasons. Have I gone completely off the deep end again, DJ? I know I'm a waffle-mancer sometimes.
I wasn't aware you were ever out of the deep end.
It could happen. It could happen. Yeah.
The deep end's where all the sharks are.
Yeah. Now, when you're in a small team, you have to kind of be, you know, writer, designer, and occasionally programmer yourself. So, yeah, it's all. Add a friend. So it's definitely not nothing. It's
Yeah, Alpha the Deluge says we poor writers. Yeah, I feel it, but I've had to do worse things.
we've all seen the darkness in the heart of the darkness at the heart of men.
Oh, for my TV final, like a couple of semesters ago, I wrote 15 pages of a script in a day, if not more.
That sounds painful.
It was very painful.
So, why would they make you do that?
And then I went to go talk to some people, and they were like, "Oh, that's good. That's the pace you should be writing at it every day."
Aha! Oh, that's terrifying. So jumping back in, so Greenfire was saying, what about Beadora's barter system when you go into the market and have a base price like they do in Recketeer? So how do you feel on that one? Because, dude, if we have a market in towns, that means we have a base price of what an object is worth, so that your bargaining could pull a median price in barter when you're discussing with other people. We could give our players essentially a little bit of a psychic knowledge.
Well, the problem with that is whenever base prices are introduced, it's usually at a higher price than the equilibrium price, which is where supply and demand intersect. And so that eventually creates a surplus of items because there are less people who want to buy at that price.
Yeah.
And there are too many people who would rather sell at that price.
Okay.
So for the most part, base prices should end up being worked out by the market, unless something's like really going through the floor.
Okay.
Then you want to say like, no, we are setting a price floor at 1 gold because we need it to be worth something.
Okay. And Mr. Ghost is saying that as a programming student, so far they've not heard about any mechanic which is impossible to implement. With that being said, if I was a lead programmer, I would want a solid team behind me if this is going to work. Oh, hell yes. Like, let's look at it like this, Mr. Ghost. There are 40 of us hanging out doing this. There are 40 designers in this project. Imagine how many feckin' coders you've got on your team, so do not worry. And Dashkul is making a very good point about what would happen when we applied Goon Squads to this setup, which is why I was discussing earlier about how an economic crash could be good content, but that's one that we can come back to later once we've got a better idea. But if we can anticipate that there will be abuse by group, then it's possible that we can make that content for other players. But we could also waste our entire day designing for the theoretical troll. So,
yeah, I believe it's more interesting to basically, if I would put in real world terms, legislate after instead of before. So, like, let the first person who figures out that exploit to make off like a bandit,
okay.
And then let the story continue on from there.
Like the coffee cups. Did I already tell the coffee cup story from Eve?
I believe you may have told it on a Ket stream once. I don't think you talked about it here today.
Alright, so I'll give you the TLDR because I got Matt in the wings. But they implemented a new system in Eve where the value of the objects inside your ship were also taken into account. So it wasn't just like, yo, you've got a battleship. If the battleship is blown up, it is worth this much in bounties. It also was like, yo, you've got a battleship and it's full of all this incredible kit, and you've got like a bunch of really expensive items in your hold. It's now worth loads more. And everyone was like, yay! Now if I blow up someone who's got like the best of the best kit on a small ship, I'm making money. And this is where the coffee cups come in. So you have to understand that I was a battleship pilot, and I kept a cup of coffee, a space marine that I rescued from a space station that I may or may not have blown up, I had some weird dog tags and a bunch of ammo. And so, like, just in case. Oh, I also had a genetically engineered dog, which I also saved from a space station, which I also blew up. So I just kept these on it because, one, it made me laugh, and two, I like the idea that if I got killed, someone would see those in my hold and be like, the hell was this guy doing? So I hovered over my coffee cup one day and found out that it was worth billions. And I'm like, what the holy heckin' shit is this? It turns out a group of very enterprising players had bought all the coffee in the universe they could get their hands on. And bearing in mind that coffee was worth like pennies, like nothing in this universe. Like less than you would spend on a single shell of ammo. They bought everything and then relisted it all for billions. So that the average price of a cup of coffee in the entire universe went through the roof. So they would then get themselves murdered by their friends and claim the bounty. The bounty being worth stupid amounts because of the cups of coffee in their hold. Oh, did I drop a heck there? Oh, I do apologise. So yeah. And that's a great story. Now, it got patched, but yeah, I think that's a story that added content. Anyway, DJ, I will jump back to your good self before we close up, but I should... so I've sent a request to Matt. I should have a Matt-flavoured person very shortly. As soon as he jumps on Discord. Send us a message, Matt.
Sending out an SOS.
To Matt. Core philosophies, largely capitalist economy with socialist aspects. Well, yeah, I still find that when you think about it, a lot of fantasy worlds have inherently additional socialist stuff. It's kind of fascinating. But as I was saying earlier, I think like if we can get this to just adding these, if we can inherently nail this, not inherently, if we can nail this at this level, then I think it's something we can bring back down to single player. Assuming that I have... Yes! Okay. DJ, thank you so much, and we'll be back with you in just a bit, alright?
See you in a bit.
Anyway, it is now my esteemed pleasure to introduce you all to my buddy, Matt Campbell. Excuse me, I have this number for a Matt.
Hello.
Oh, I need to make you louder.
Okay.
There we go. Now we can hear you.
Hello.
So, for those that don't know you, would you like to introduce yourself, good sir?
Mike Gamble. I'm 25 years old and I live in the United Kingdom. And I am a game designer, developer, all-round video game person. Also, weirdly, film director, but that's not really relevant for this stream. And I made a game called RPG Tycoon, which is how we met. Because you were like the one person who I've ever met that's run up to me and was like, "I've played your game before," and I was like, "I feel so sorry for you." Yeah, and now I had a brief stint working for Unity for about a year, so I doubt anybody will have done, but if you've watched any of their YouTube videos, some of them would have been my voice specifically from last year.
Ooh.
Now I'm freelance designer developer working on projects, and in the interim between releasing RPG Tycoon and now I've been working on games, and I'm actually at this exact moment blocking out a thing. So I don't know if have you been seeing any of that on Twitter? I've spoken about it briefly and like when I get chances to work on stuff.
I want to say yes, but I am drawing a blank right now. Okay. I'm pretty sure I've seen it because I was very excited about it. But right now I can pretty much just do like in-game economies and vaguely close to human-like
Yeah,
conversation.
let's get to stuff that's actually relevant.
But absolutely plug your shit when before you leave. Also, Chia and Mr. Ghost have seen your Unity videos, so you are known.
Oh, neat. Hi.
And
Which one specifically? I wonder. I'm curious.
And Chiat was saying they watched him at ×2 speed so they could get through him faster. So you sound a little bit more high-pitched.
Yeah, ×2 speed is the way to go. Yeah, I do that with all of the live talks.
Yeah, I know. And they're good. It's just I'm a busy person, yo.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the other thing that I thought was also worth mentioning very briefly. So those of you that were here for the finale for Rain World, Matt was also at the infamous £1,000 gin bar tab night.
That was a good time. That was my first GDC.
Was that your first one?
Fun. That was my first GDC. Yeah. Well, I mean, the last one was only my second, so yeah.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, I think I was still massively, because it was probably like the day after I got in, and I had done Train Jam, so I was super jet lagged because I'd gone back in time 3 times.
Nice.
And then we got really drunk, so I had a good time. Free booze is always a great experience, and you somehow are very good at arranging that.
We all have our gifts. And
yours is finding the best way to get drunk for no money. I like it.
I'm not a rich bloke, and we got a budget for it, and I'm like,
true story. Yeah.
But I could waffle on about tales of drunken shenanigans until the cows come home, until the cows return bleary-eyed. But it is not that day.
Tips over.
So, how much have you been following, good sir?
I've been listening and dropping in and out, though I'm no expert, so I'm not sure how much I can add to this. I've been sort of, like I said, I'm doing some block-out design stuff, so I've been half paying attention, but try me.
Well, okay. So, we're approaching this from the multiplayer segment, but you approached it from a tycoon setup where the economy is also part of the challenge. So economy-wise, what were some of the big takeaways from RPG Tycoon?
Okay, so interestingly, I'm going to caveat this with, or preface this with the fact that when I first started making that game, I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never made a game before, and so if I approach the design of it now, which I might come back to because I might possibly be doing that again, I would approach it with a much more structured manner than I had. A lot of my economy system in that game was just random numbers I was throwing down and then hoping for the best and trying it out again and again every time I was playing the game, and then just balancing it that way, which was an interesting experience.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I found was that because essentially these the way that your economy grows in that game are items that your heroes will receive when they come back from a quest.
Yeah.
As well as money that they receive for that.
Okay.
In theory, you're only going to sell the item if you don't want to use it, because items have usability values to them as well as. So, for instance, you could use a map to unlock a new location.
Yeah.
But if you've got all of the locations already, you'll just sell the map, right?
Okay.
Or you'll hear like random swords might get dropped, and if it's a better sword than the hero currently has, you're going to want to use it, or you might want to equip it to a different hero, or save it for another hero that you might hire down the line.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, you're going to sell it, right? So that then adds gold. So because it's a tycoon game, the only currency you're interested in is gold, and I guess experience. But that's expansion pack DLC, which added a bunch of actual resources into the game, which were then used to build things.
Yeah.
So previously, I think it was just that there were. It was purely just money and a level that you needed to build stuff in the world.
Okay.
But then I added this expansion pack, and then every single building and item, every single building and sort of thing you would place in the world, decoration or whatever, would cost some kind of resource. So I think it started off as like it was tiered. So it would be like a base material, wood, then like an advanced material, and then copper and gold, and all this stuff, and that added a layer of complication to the balance of the design.
Okay. So,
And it was an interesting challenge to have it, like, to not have had it there in the base game, but I think it was always something I wanted to add, and I just never got around to it.
So essentially you added most of the overarching economy stuff after initial. Also, Echo,
Yeah.
I see you there. I see you. Watto, welcome back. So you added all of that. That must have been a heck of a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I learned a lot making that game, and part of what I did with that DLC was essentially hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And that economy system that I added in was to try and solve some of the gameplay complications of, like, there just being gold and there not feeling like enough value to the play of the game.
Okay.
And also gating it slightly as well, because obviously if it's harder to get a certain type of material, then it's going to take a bit longer to place the building that you need, and you also then you have goals to work for. So for me, the resource and sort of the balance of the economy of the game was about giving the player something to work towards, I suppose.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it was always based off of feedback that I was constantly tinkering, and you, just as you do, you're constantly tinkering with an economy in a game to make sure that it sort of feels fair and gives accordingly.
That's way cool. I mean, it's what we're doing here is obviously a little bit more bastard tricky because initially, so when this conversation initially came up, it was that a lot of MMO economies have sprung up from kind of classical D&D design,
Yes.
which is only really designed for a couple of people at tops. Like, in a single player or co-op experience, if your players end up becoming super duper trillionaires with all the best
Yes.
gear, they're doing great. But
Yes, of course, yeah.
in a multiplayer game, if two of your people end up with super duper trillionaires with all the best stuff, then everyone else is having a shit time.
So yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned it. I mentioned it in the chat earlier. For me, one of the interesting things is as what Frontier have been doing with Elite Dangerous, because it depends how you look at it, but in theory, that game is an MMO, right?
Yeah.
But they're doing sort of accurate simulations of economy, to the fact that colonizations are happening across the galaxy, and there are events that are taking place where there's wars that are breaking out, and so certain regions are in specific demand for certain resources, and materials.
Yeah.
And so you're actually encouraged by contracts to go to this far-reaching side of the planet or side of the galaxy to help grow that economy. And then once that economy grows, it can then have, boom. There's a whole sort of political economic system that is quite, as far as I can tell, quite cleverly implemented in the background of that game.
That's super cool.
Yeah, I remember specifically there was a whole sort of contract while there was an alien invasion happening a few months ago.
Oh, the great big flowery flower deaths.
Yeah, and I remember that the surrounding areas nearby where that was happening were in sort of like a lockdown mode, and they were desperately scavenging for resources. So you would get like 10 times the amount of money by delivering these, by taking that extra. You'd have to go quite far to get that resource and then bring it all the way back.
But the reward, the risk and reward was there. Like, you gotta.
Yeah, precisely.
Oh, that's
However,
super
because
cool.
of this, there were more pirates in the area, which meant that you were more likely to get attacked. And so yeah, it was a complete risk reward thing. So tying something like that in, whereby perhaps regions have some political diplomacies that cause fluctuations within the economic system, could be a good way to balance. For instance, I think you were talking about what if players hold on to their money and all these sort of things, or hold on to these resources, or how do you deal with constantly renewing resources, is by having, for instance, governments and these NPCs that use them and take them out of the game.
Yeah, I mean, we were discussing the potentials of letting players run the towns. So essentially having them be promoted to like NPC status,
Yes.
but not NPC.
Yeah, like mayor.
Yeah. So they're like half in, half out of being a moderator, but they're also kind of playing a political game all their own, and
Yeah.
I think that would work really well, because I think that bartering back and forth. Also, if you are looking at large amounts of resources at a town to town or faction to faction level, like I might make a deal with you for a shitload of iron for a shitload of wood.
Yeah.
You then post a request in the town for a shitload of wood, and then I scrounge up a ton of iron, and then we send those trades. But we might want to send those trades with an envoy, because who knows?
Yeah, but precisely. Yeah, I think having that element of randomness, and I guess this is sort of where it does tie into my RPG Tycoon, is that whole game was implemented within dice rolls, and to some degree within not real economies, but if you look at the chance of something happening, right? The chance of you carrying a £10 or $10 note or whatever, a gust of wind coming along and blowing it out of your hand, right? That could happen.
Yeah.
And so having that element of randomness, of like ways for the economy to really either be screwed over or screw you over, is realistic to some degree.
Yeah.
People lose money, people wash money in their pockets, and or they find things in their coat like 2 years later. So yeah, this idea that perhaps you can get attacked while you're trying to send money to somebody, that ship or trade route could be plundered. I think is very, especially, I mean, if you've got, is there sailing in the game? I mean, if there's sailing in the game, you've got to have pirates, right?
Oh, I mean, it's called Longship Online. Yeah, there's going to be some other hubbarting pirates.
So, I mean, that's going to have an impact on the economy quite drastically, I suppose.
Okay, sorry, right? I need to address something in chat. I've eaten! Okay, I've had a lot of coffee today, I won't lie. I was up quite early reading a whole bunch of different write-ups on digital economies because I love this. So, yeah, I'm up, I've eaten. Yes, this is coffee number 3 or coffee number 4. So that's probably why I'm dropping a lot of swears. But I think, Matt, you're bringing up something that we haven't really discussed today, and I'm really glad that you did, which is that it's designing a system that isn't necessarily perfect, but is robust. So like an economy, like this economy here could crash because of war, and then the others either are helping or benefiting from that. But that the players in the region that's crashing aren't having a bad time, that their experience...
Gonna have a bad time.
So, okay, they're gonna get hecked up, but so long as they're getting experience out of it. So it's not that if they have no money, they can't do anything. If anything, like, they have no money, so now they have to work twice as hard, or they have to scramble, and things are happening, and, it's set on all sides.
So globalization comes into this, right? This is, and this is actually, you say about taking politics out of this, but sort of you kind of can't when it comes to economy like this, is that like the idea of the EU, right, is to promote this system of globalization and trade economy, whereby by freedom of movement, countries that perhaps aren't performing as well, their citizens can go and work in countries that are performing better, and use that financial gain to benefit their initial society. I mean, there's other political, economic issues you could go into about that, but the core idea behind globalization is specifically that is this idea that when somewhere becomes too expensive to do something, trade moves somewhere cheaper, and then somewhere else becomes cheaper to do it. And I mean, look at the games industry, right? Vancouver, right? Like
that was the new cheap hotness,
right? And it happens. And look at the film industry, Georgia now, right? Everything's being filmed in Georgia.
Yeah, why is that?
I'd never heard of Georgia until like 4 years ago, where their logo was suddenly on everything, because they have a whole bunch of tax breaks, just like Vancouver became too expensive to film in. Yeah, I mean, I still believe they do have more film tax breaks, but they were like, the government then goes, oh, there's all these industries here who we can now tax. They're up and they've been here for 10 years or whatever. Yeah. So then Georgia goes, hey, we're not going to tax you. and
everyone's
that's,
like, peg it to
sort of-
Georgia.
Yeah, and that's sort of how it works, and that's sort of what's trying to happen again in the UK, because the UK have now gone, oh wait, games bring money in, but not quite there yet, but still, and so some level of simulation that could support this idea of a globalization structure is probably also something worth discussing.
I know. I think I think that's a real good. When I said I wanted to leave the politics out of it, it was just kind of like.
Oh yeah, of course. But it's some people will say that globalization isn't a net positive. That's all.
Yeah. And okay, so if we take player behavior into account, players will go where the most amount of resources are and the highest chance of reward is. So that would be a defining factor in terms of like player migration between regions. And the idea of having multiple regions within nations, multiple towns and cities within regions, I think is very good. So Biodora was asking an important question, which is, will we have player housing? So here's my theory that we...
I mean, that sounds awesome.
It does. We allow for... So we were going to do our taxation at a group level so that we allow... guild houses.
Property tax.
Yeah.
Property tax for if you want to buy a house, property tax would pay well, and then you've got council tax, and I mean
the bigger your group, the larger the space you're going to need. So it means that those finances and resources are going back into the area. But if we're adding the idea of player political, so our NPCs are mayors wanting to attract guilds to their area, then you've got the kind of the debate.
They could drop that tax, right?
Yeah, or they can find other ways to lure players in.
Or subsidy. You could be like, well, actually, you could have a negative tax, so it could be 10% cheaper to be there. They could almost make a lost leader, right?
But then bring a couple of strong guilds in. And, I mean, moving between one place and another wouldn't be nothing. This is the thing we're coming back to. So, the physical moving of goods is something that would be very important in this world. Like a bag of rice, to get a bag of grain from one town to the other, you must physically take that grain from here to here.
Now it sounds a hell of a lot like Elite Dangerous.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to get your ship over to this other side of the galaxy? You got to go back and get it, and then take it all the way back here.
Yep.
I can guarantee you, depending on the size of the thing. How quickly it moves, it's not a very fun experience.
But
that's worth keeping in mind.
Yeah.
That's worth keeping in mind in the design.
We could work out some ways where things can be taken from one place to another, but the importance is that it's not instantaneous.
Yeah, so they did eventually add which I'm so glad they did. They did eventually add a feature where when you went to another station, you could pay for somebody to bring it to you, rather than have to go back and get it. So you would pay 1,000 credits or whatever, and it would be like, this thing will be at this station in half an hour. So you could go fly off and fight some bounties around the sun of that thing while you wait for your transport ship to turn up. So that's something like that. A system like that would probably be worthwhile, but actually forcing players to physically carry and go back and log everything is a net negative on meter, unless you're somebody who utterly adores that sort of stuff. But I'm somebody that really enjoys games like Euro Truck Sim, and so I love the realism of something like Elite Dangerous.
But even then, amazing.
Even then, it is quite a slog to when you suddenly just want to change what you're doing because it has a different function and you have to go all the way back and get it. It's quite frustrating because maybe you only have an hour left and it's going to take you half an hour to get there. You're like, well, okay, maybe I'll just log off now. So.
Also, as an unrelated note, at some point, Echo, me, and maybe Dan Jones are going to race trucks in Euro Truck Simulator with the multiplayer mod. So brilliant. I will let you know when that's happening because that is amazing.
Yeah, I'm in because I play that game in VR and it's amazing. Fun fact, actually, like completely off tangent, but I totally learned how to reverse a truck in for real, but in VR.
That's super cool.
My dad ended up having to reverse a caravan, and I stood outside was able to like instruct him on how to reverse this caravan perfectly into this parking spot, just purely based on sitting in a cab.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting. It was one of those moments where you just sort of think, "How do I know how to?" Oh yeah, that's how I know.
So I tell you what, we'll be articulating back onto DJ because I think we're going to get back into the weeds of economy.
Yes, get stuck in.
But does anyone have any questions for Matt before I let him skedaddle off? So if you got any questions for Matt, RPG Tycoon creator, now is the time.
Yes, anything game design-y is cool, or just any random questions, I suppose.
Gives me a chance to plug it again, because like I said, it is entirely worth everybody's time.
That's subjective. No, it's. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Tal's asking, do you need a CM yet? Do you need a community manager yet?
Drop me a line. Potentially, not yet, but perhaps in the near future.
Are you Brighton based, Matt?
Yes.
Oh, so Tal's going to be at the Brighton meet. So might actually be able to grab a pint, like people.
What
humans.
Brighton meet? Does it Brighton meet?
Yes. In all fairness, Tal was telling me like 2 minutes before I was about to go on live, so yeah. Oh, and DJ's going to be back with us in a sec, so we got time to waffle. And then whilst Tal is reminding me of what the Brighton meet is, so Matt, what is your background?
As in my spiel of what I was saying earlier when I first came on. I can repeat that. Yeah. So my background, I suppose, is originally film and technically it's media production. So it's an all-rounder of just how to make media, such as film and television and radio. But I specialized in film production, which I then chose to specialize in actually directing, writing and directing. I directed a feature film at university, and then I didn't carry on making films because the only way to get into it really was doing promo for people, and I found that really boring because if you've ever tried to make a promo for a company, once you've made one, you've made them all because they're all structurally exactly the same, and they're super dull. I mean,
you could do what I did for a while. You could be a runner and hate your life.
On an editing level, yeah, I mean, running's cool because you get to be on set at least, and sets can be fun.
That was something.
So, I mean, that was sort of why I made the film in the first place, because I was like, all right, if I'm gonna make movies, I want to make feature films. Yeah. So I'm not gonna make short films. I'm just gonna make features. So, I mean, I did some comedy stuff with my friend at uni, and we spent a lot of our free time making sketch comedy on YouTube. That was sort of just to teach craft, really, more than anything else.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot about just directing and editing and visual effects and all this stuff, and honed that. But really, for me, I was like, well, I need the challenge of making a feature because everybody makes short. You see people making features. So I did, and nobody thought I could do it, but we managed to do it. We raised like $5,000 and made that. And then I spent like 3 years editing it because it was only me at that point.
Oh.
So I graduated university. And in that period, I'd started working on RPG Tycoon. So I moved home and then put the game into early access, and that was then funding it. And I was like, oh, games make me money. And people in the games industry are amazing. People in the film industry.
Don't tell anyone, they'll find out.
People in the film industry only want success for themselves. Now that's a mass overgeneralization. But speak to anybody, and the differences between the two industries is unreal. There are a lot of amazing people.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly on that one.
Yeah, it's just a different attitude towards how you approach work, because it's just so cutthroat. That's all. Like the film industry is just really hard, and relies on a lot of pieces to get anything successful. Whereas the games industry is a bit more freeform. and a bit more constructive rather than destructive. So it's just mentalities. Also, it's younger. Anyway, so yeah, I was making RPG Tycoon, and then I launched that in 2016. Moved to Brighton, made the DLC for RPG Tycoon. Then the game stopped selling, so I stopped working on RPG Tycoon and started working on other stuff. Worked for Unity for a while, as I said, and I was in that interim working on my second game, which is a game called Living the Deal, which is a sort of business management sim. I can only really describe it as The Sims meets Monopoly with a bit of Harvest Moon thrown in.
I'm sure I've seen you post about that, but my brain is just drawing a complete blank.
Yeah, I've posted a fair amount about that. I haven't touched it in a while because we ran out of money. Indie life, yo. So, like I said, I was working for Unity for a while, and now I'm just freelance contracting. And yeah, just sort of dabbling on a few projects here and there. My current thing I'm working on is a game that's very, very, very similar to Crazy Taxi, because it's I'm literally working on it now, and it's the reason I'm doing that is because it's something I can approach from a design standpoint. I don't have to figure a lot of design out.
Yeah.
Whereas on Living the Deal, if I go back to working on that, I need sort of 2 or 3 months of full-time work to get it to where I need it to be. I just don't have that time at the moment. So I'm choosing, and also I kind of want to ship something before the year's out. So I've been jumping onto this project, which is it's really just sort of a palette cleanser and what's the word? Like, it's a small thing, like a small.
Well, that sounds
breakout
awesome.
project.
And Rhymes of Goose is suggesting Unbalanced Ride Share should be the name of your title.
That is close to what I was thinking of, but the name I've officially decided on is Cab.
Oh, you got eaten by robots just as you said the name of your title. What was it?
Cabs of Chaos.
Cabs of Chaos.
Yeah.
That's fucking brilliant. I just need to get you like a knockoff indie Offspring soundtrack, and then job's a good one.
I've sort of found one,
yes!
but it's all instrumental. However, I know enough. You know the RPG Tycoon soundtrack, so and are you the person who knows the story behind my music in my games?
No, actually.
Are you the person?
You might have told me, but there was a lot of gin involved.
You're a Real Big Fish fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know Suburban Legends?
Yeah.
Okay, so Chris, my composer, is in Suburban Legends.
That's why you had the Real Big Fish. Ah, now it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matt scored tickets to backstage at Real Big Fish, and I couldn't go because I was rancidly ill, and I'm still gutted about that.
Yeah, it was a really good time. It's always fun. Yeah, it's weird how that comes up, but I mean, I'm just somebody that like I knew them. I've just known them so long, and then Chris about me making RPG Tycoon, and he was like, "Oh, I really want to get into game. I really like games, and I would love to get into composing for games." And I was like,
"Yeah,
compose. So if you want to compose for it, go ahead." So and he just did such a great job. I absolutely love the music to RPG Tycoon. I have it. It's on Spotify actually. You can listen to it.
Oh shit! I'll make a mental note of that.
Yeah. And yeah, so he's been working with me ever since. But it's just funny. It's funny how this one thing where I went to a Real Big Fish gig and then just sort of started chatting to the band, and now I'm good friends with them, and then have ended up working with. Like, just say yes to people. That's the best thing. Is just jump. Like, that's my best advice to anybody. Is honestly talk to people, and like, just don't ever think that you meeting somebody and not getting work out of it is like a downside, because you can meet people and know them, and then 3 or 4 years down the line something comes up and end up working with them, because just being a decent human being seems to have that effect, I think.
It seems to be the case, or at very least consuming an inordinate amount of gin. So yeah, so Tal wanted me to remind you to hit them up on Discord. They've dropped their name in there. and that it's the Brighton
Okay, cool.
Game Dev Pub Meet, the one that's like once a month. I think.
Yeah, the one on Friday. Yeah, Tom. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so you guys can actually be like human people's hanging out. Unfortunately, I can't nip on over there from Seattle, but otherwise I absolutely would. So,
Yeah, you should. You should like we could like drink or something.
Just carry around a little pad with my face on and be like, hey!
Yeah. Well, you know enough of us, so
Good
probably
point.
could just hand you off all night.
Oh, now that might be a very interesting show, but assuming the internet holds. So, Matt, like, thank you for jumping on to come chat with us. Yo.
No worries, dude. I'm gonna have. It's basically midnight here, so I'm gonna have to go to bed.
And at some, the other thing I was going to say is, I am going to do a stream of RPG Tycoon at some point because I think it's important. So I'd love to get you on the line when we do that.
I would love to talk to you about that because I also might be working on something related to that.
What could it possibly mean?
I haven't announced yet, but
we're getting the inside scoop, everybody.
Yeah. We should talk about that because that could work out quite well.
Yes. But don't send me messages until after the stream in case I accidentally open it on the main screen.
I'm not. Yeah, don't worry. I'll send you a message. Like tomorrow or something, or when it's relevant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So,
all right. Well, yeah. Thank you.
No, dude. Thank you for your time. It was super cool chatting with you.
Thank you, everyone, for putting up with my terrible stories.
All right, peace out, dude.
See you later.
But quickly before you go,
yes,
E3 per bowl next month.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Let's do it.
We're doing it. I'm doing it fucking live this year. It's going to be amazing.
Oh, you're going to do it live? Okay, I thought. Yeah, all right. Let's do it.
Twitch lets you
Am I
broadcast through.
Okay.
And if I can't get you on the line, I'd love to get you to do some more shorts again because those were so funny.
Yeah. Okay. It would be. I think it would work well if I was on the line. I don't know. There must be a way we can figure out to like cut to my camera, or something somehow. If we can figure out a way to do that, that could be fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about that because I'm well up for doing that.
E3 per bowl. Okay. To be continued.
Yes. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. All right, and we are off with Matt, and we are back with, yo, DJ. So
Hello?
close. Yes. How's it going?
I'm fine.
Well, Mr. Ghost just laid down some scathing burns of. So we talked about economy game design at some point. Well. And Easy Perp was saying, hey, are we talking about indie devs? So we were just talking to Matt Gambell, who made RPG Tycoon, and we are currently doing a little game design challenge, a little group exercise. We are attempting to design the economy of our fictional MMO, Longship Online. And once again, as I say this throughout the show, everything that we design here is open source. So all of this document, any concepts we come up with are all free to use, be they good or ill. And yeah, our goal is to create a healthy economy, a healthy setup. So one of the things that Matt was saying, DJ, which I'd like to kick off Arc 3 of this design discussion, was the idea of inherent chaos. So that there are situations whereby a town or a region can be in economic trouble, and it leads to content. That there are ways that objects can be lost or go missing within the world. And I don't mean like, oh, I checked my pocket and I'm missing a tenner. I mean like, our shipment of X was going to this town and has disappeared.
Yeah. So one of the things you brought up in your discussion with Matt was the idea of things like piracy.
Yeah.
And while they are great fun, at least in the real world, it might end up working out somewhat different in a video game if we were to make this. But
okay, so tell me your thoughts on that.
The inherent problem with it is that when you have people like stealing and like selling things on a black market,
yeah,
that market is a effectively different economy from the main economy, and it doesn't really feed into the main loop that everyone who's selling legitimate goods does. It essentially takes value out of the main economy and kind of,
Okay.
I don't know.
So if it's so, let's say theoretically that it's very difficult to fence objects. Fence meaning the term of selling things on the black market. Perhaps because there will be theft and bastardry. Perhaps if that is mostly focused around like direct theft or trade. And what I mean by that is, so I want a sword. I don't want to pay for this sword, so I kill the person I take their sword. Or I don't want to pay for this sword, so I find a way to direct steal it. Not because I want to steal for profit, but what I want to steal for myself. Versus the idea that I steal this sword so that I may then trade it with someone else for something else. You know what I'm saying? So there's never... So we try and keep a black market from happening, but we don't stop player behavior. Or have I gone completely off the deep end again?
We could also just legitimize theft. We could just make it an inherent part of our economy as well.
We could do. So, did you ever put any time into Ultima Online?
No, I wasn't around for it.
Okay, so one of the things that was interesting about that was the karma system they had. The more despicable acts you did, the colour above your name would change. Initially, everyone was blue, meaning good, grey, meaning questionable, and red, meaning you have just done a murder. And depending on your karma, depended on how the guards could be called on you. So if you walk into the capital city and you're grey, then someone else can call the guards and they will teleport in and murder the heck out of you. But if you were in the pirate town, if you were anything other than red, the guards would be called in and murder the heck out of you. So I wonder if we could create a specific region just for piracy. Oh, and I Caught Fireworks is saying it's just like Sword Art Online. No, well, Sword Art Online took the PK system from Ultima Online. The fact they even call it PK and not PvP, I think, is very evident of that. What are your feels on that?
Well, I'd almost say that person-to-person theft is worse in an economic sense than legitimizing it as a part of our economy, as a trade you can invest in.
Okay,
because
explain.
then there's no value being generated by the transfer of that item. It's just going from one person to the other instead of there being a monetary exchange where someone is paying taxes into the system.
Okay. So, in theory, like, the base level person-to-person theft is worse.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, I'm not married to it. Like, this isn't the hill that I want to die on. And if we need to remove, like, theft and stuff like that, then I'm not against it. We could do piracy at a higher level, so that, a shipment of goods is a thing that can be pirated, but not the coin out of your pocket. You know what I mean? How does everyone feel about that one? Because so far I've discussed it, but I haven't. Like, I don't think anyone's directly said that there'll be shipments going between towns and cities. So. Yeah.
Well, there's an economic concept that's pretty complicated and involves some heavy math. But simply, let's just say, and I'm using a canned example, so I don't have to do the math.
That sounds lovely.
Let's say it's an economy of two people, a farmer and a builder.
Okay.
And let's say the farmer has $100, and so they buy the services of the builder to build another farm building.
Yeah.
And so then that person, that builder, is then going to buy food from the farmer, because they're the only two people in this economy.
Yeah.
But they're not going to spend all of that $100.
Yeah.
They're going to spend a fraction of that. That's called the marginal propensity to consume.
Yes.
Yeah.
Will said
And
as if
so,
he knew
like,
what that was.
let's say it's the marginal propensity to consume is 0.6.
Yeah.
So the farmer pays $100 to the builder.
Yeah.
Then the builder pays $60 of food to the farmer.
Yeah.
Then it goes on and on, effectively on infinitum. So to infinity.
Yeah.
And this is a concept of a convergent series, which basically means an infinite number of series eventually converges on one, like
Okay.
on an actual number. So that $100, if we're saying the marginal propensity to consume is 0.6,
Yeah.
that $100 is effectively worth $250 in the market. So if someone were to just steal the sword is only worth $100. But if it were to be traded, then that $100
Okay.
eventually gets turned into $250.
So its overall value within the economy, so to speak,
Yes,
in relation to what you need within that environment.
correct.
Now, I mean, I'm not super keen on stamina bars and food systems, but do we need to add any kind of, like, to make this work? Can we make this work without our users needing to consume a loaf of bread every day, or every hour, or every 20 minutes? I really want bread. Like, I've eaten, but I just want. Sorry, you were saying. I know. I was asking.
I mean, we can do instead of just making it a requirement, we could just make it a reward system like buffs,
Okay.
like they do in Zelda.
That's not a terrible idea. So it heals and it also buffs. I like in my heart of hearts, what I would like is that for the most part, like food, grain, etc., is necessary for NPCs in towns. So if you want more NPCs in your town to sell more goods and to have more stuff, then you need to be supplying them with more food and supplies.
Yeah, but there's also the group of players that just like to be chefs and like to hone the craft of cooking and sell it to people.
Oh, I'm cool with that. And yeah, I Caught Fire once was agreeing you with the we shouldn't punish players, but we should reward them. No, and I love the idea that we can somehow reward the kinds of output that we see in a region or we see in a city or a town based on what is being put out. So, like, if you and your friendos move to a small village and start punting out, like, cracking high-quality food, that there's some bonus to that. Possibly similar to the blacksmithing title that was inferred earlier. So...
Yeah, like Master Chef.
It's not a bad idea. God, Lloyd Grossman. Before he was killed brutally by Mary Berry, like, he was truly a master chef. I know this joke's not going to translate very well, but yeah, Mary Berry, just the old 5-point palm finger death, and then she just got Lloyd's soul right from the just pulled it out screaming. Yeah, that's why no one ever goes back for a second season of Great British Bake Off. The ones that don't make it don't survive. They don't survive. Okay, so jumping back into chat. So chat saying robbery must be an action that the player takes. The victim has taken the trading actions. The trader how knows. I mean, chat. Are we sold on having theft as part of our world? Like, our team gets to tell the other teams what happens. So, do we really wanna continue with having theft as a mechanic? And Chiat saying robbery is super exciting. So, yeah, okay. Rhymes' Muth is adding had some weirdness in the dock. Started in typing and it swapped windows on me. Oh dear. I'll have a look down and see what's going on. I mean, there's some from Greenfire. I don't see anything pending, Rhymes and Moose, but there's no worry. I Caught Fire once was also adding that maybe you can get badges or traits for constantly eating or not eating, like well fed. So if you've eaten every play session for a week, or if you've eaten like gourmet food, oh man, that just hit me. That's feckin' brilliant, dude. Sorry, I Caught Fire. I was saying dude to DJ, but I Caught Fire. That's brilliant, because then we're not punishing players for not adhering to the world's rules, but we're buffing the heck out of them. We could balance for buffed players as well. Oh,
yeah,
I really
definitely.
like that.
And like maybe even like the people who like go out and find new food and tell people about them, like foodie could be a buff.
I really like that. Eat a different food from a different place each day of the week. And Echo saying that we can't balance their buffness. We can bloody try. I have 30 designers. Are we designers now? I think we're designers. I have 30 designers at my disposal. We can design anything. Possibly. Maybe even balance something. I hadn't really thought this through. But no, I really like that, because I'm so heckin' done with games that are like, you must eat this much food, otherwise your bar goes down. Oh no, you haven't ate enough food, now you're dead. I love the idea of rewarding players for playing the game that we would like them to experience. Not for telling them what to do, but rewarding them for doing things that fit the experience. But like taking the Doom, the most recent Doom design philosophy into this environment. Do you know what I'm saying?
I don't know what you're referencing in Doom, but go ahead and tell.
It was just the so Doom, you heal and gain more munitions by attacking aggressively, by getting right up in the face of your enemies and blowing them away, rather than attacking them slowly from a distance. Our game would reward players for exploring, for trading, for experiencing, and so like staying well fed and well nourished for doing missions, for fighting, for doing the things that we want our player to experience. We would reward them, and the idea of rewarding them for doing it like once a day, regularly, that increases the amount of resources that our users are consuming, which helps with our overall economy.
Yeah.
Holy crud, it's like we know what we're doing. See, and at that point...
Now...
Oh, sorry, go for it.
No, yeah, I was just going to steer us back onto the topic of, like, theft and transportation between regions and stuff.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
Finish your thought.
No, just that that's a really elegant way of getting players to have a really good time, because we're not asking them to like chug a potion to get the max buffs, and it's not like Zelda where it's you end up saving a bunch of your food for that perfect boss battle. I actually had too much super well cooked food by the end of that game. It was nuts, because I'd only eat baked apples to heal because I didn't want to use my tasty food. Like, if you want to be like high tier badass, you need to be eating well, looking after your character, and by the process of that, interacting with the economy. Like, you could get a bonus buff on your crafting stats by crafting every day. So we're increasing that idea of like blacksmith for hire, that you're there in the village like tapping away on your works, and people can come talk to you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not, if you don't do the thing, we'll take it away from you. It's that if you do the thing regularly, we'll make you better at it. Damn. Why haven't more people thought of this? There's got to be some inherent problem with it I'm not seeing, but Right, so you wanted to bring it back onto transportation and movement of goods. This is important.
Yeah, I was thinking on like how we could make transportation in the region not inconvenient, but also interesting and not really the easiest thing to do.
Okay. Did
And
you
I
have
was
any
thinking,
thoughts on that?
yeah, maybe we, like, let's say you are a day trader and your warehouse is in country or region A,
Yeah.
but you want to bring the stuff over to region B without actually traveling there. You could say, go to a trade port and say, I want someone to bring X from this warehouse over here.
Okay.
And you like pay an amount, and that person like gets a caravan and like brings it over. You can even like put in money to hire mercenaries to guard it and have them physically bring it over.
That's super cool.
Yeah, so it's not like the easiest thing to do. You'd need a significant amount of money, but if you're doing that, it's because you have a significant amount of goods you want brought over.
And I mean, that would then feed into maybe not a direct questing system, but it could potentially feed into a system whereby the mercenaries are being paid to protect our players. For that, I'd need to think about that more carefully, but I like that. It does mean that we have one of the really good things about EVE Online, which is that convenience costs. So like you can buy in EVE Online, you physically have to be in the space station where the thing is for sale to pick it up. So if you go to the main trade hub in the universe, you can buy everything, but it's expensive. Wait, no, hang on. Wow, DJ, I do apologise if I've been careening off the rails today. I think I might have perhaps spent a little bit too much time reading up on economics before this.
I blitzed through like an entire lesson in aggregate demand and aggregate supply on Khan Academy a couple hours before coming onto this.
Okay, that makes me feel better. Because I was like, I can't show up and have DJ think I'm a complete numpty. So yeah.
I mean, granted, I had already learned this stuff and was just refreshing my memory, but still.
Yeah. So EVE has one main trade hub, which is Jita. You can buy everything there, and it's usually the cheapest prices. Now, if we're out in the middle of like one of the dark recesses, one of the dark edges of space, and we need to like re-equip or buy more ammo, it would take us about an hour to fly back to Jita in a decent ship. It could take longer. Or we can buy the munitions locally, but it's going to be incredibly expensive because it's so far away from the manufacturing processes and from the main trade lines. And people know that the only Mother Hubbards out in the Outer Ring are doing PvP or like high-level hunting, so they know that they can afford it. So the local price is much higher. And the transportation of goods ends up happening. But what you can then do is you can start producing at a lower cost in a different region and compete. You're not having to just compete on a global scale. You can also bait places out, which is ridiculous. Small story time. Me, Craig, and Franco, we fucking bought this super expensive mining vessel, like on the cheap, because we were ready to take our corp to the next level, right? Only the the ship is being sold in a safe part of space, but to get to it, you have to go through pirate regions, and we did not realise this. So we skimmed through, and we thought we were safe. We thought we'd survived. We'd gotten past all the death and the danger. No. They were waiting for us to get the ship, turn around, and come out. They blacked the heck out of us. There were no survivors. That was how we
Sounds
lost
like fun times.
the HMS Dave Benson Phillips. And there's another joke that won't translate. Okay, it was good times. But there was a situation where they created a trap using, like, cheap baited ship. Like, that's still feckin' cool. And any time where our title, our project, where the things that we create here could feed into the rest of the game in a manner that enriches the experience, then we have won. Like, the combat team, it's their whole feckin' problem to work out how two people have a sword fight. We don't have to worry about that. But we have to worry about how that sword gets into that player's hand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, right. Let's have a little review of what we've done so far, because we've been going for 3 hours, which is a pretty good session. We usually do what, 2 or 4? I can't remember.
Somewhere between that amount.
So there's a lot in abstract, most certainly. The food is buffs, loving that. And then Greenfire having as much trouble to spell philosophy as I do every time. So I feel with this session, we've talked a lot. Would you say there are any definitive elements that we have agreed on, that things that have popped out so far that you're really liking?
Well, I think it's really interesting having the element of 4 different regions with each with their own currency that like fluctuates based on their economies.
Yeah. Rhymes and Moose is adding, if we designed for open PvP from the ground up, there would be systems that we could put in to handle it. What's that in relation to? Which is why I suggested robbery should be done by mobs, not players.
Yeah, this is addressing the fear of robbery.
Yeah. So, what does robbery add as a design element? Robbery adds fear and tension. The fear of loss, the tension of stalking your prey with a chance of victory. And as we discussed earlier, robbery removes stuff from our economy, which isn't amazing. So, does the tension of that level of world PvP, is it worth the challenges that we might have from the economic problems that it would introduce? What are your feels on this, dude? And I do apologise to keep assuming, dude, but yeah.
No, yeah, I feel we can easily go either way on this. If we want to have robbery and thievery in our game, we can definitely design for it and have it. Like, we can design it in ways that we can make it work for us. But it's also much easier to just say we aren't going to have people be robbed.
Okay, so what do you all feel, the wonderful people in the chat, what do you feel about that kind of level of PvP? Because I guess we've already agreed that players are going to be able to be killed, and there will certainly be some dropping of items. We were talking about soulbound stuff earlier, so we didn't agree on a core philosophy of how much kit players would maintain on their bodies. But there's definitely going to be PvP of some description. It might be supplemented with PvE elements depending on how we want to build up the towns, but that might just be for, like, if you and your crew are attacking a town or a village, how many guard NPCs are there, that kind of thing.
And Rhymes with Moose, it doesn't take things out of the game, but it does remove value from the economy if things are being stolen and then sold on the black market. Because then nothing's being taxed and nothing is there isn't the currency being added value to.
So actually, that's a really interesting point. When you mention the black market, what you mean is just things that are sold outside of the existing economy, right?
Correct.
Cool. Because some games have a black market as a system, and that's always kind of cool.
But that's also legitimizing thievery in a way.
So we'd have to make a call and a decision about whether or not we want to allow thievery and what we want to allow, and then if we choose it, then we decide what systems and elements we have to either enrich it or to articulate from it. But there doesn't seem to be too much call one way or the other in terms of this. So Rhymes and Moose is saying that when we're talking about the game's economy, the black market would be part of that economy. I mean, and that's true. We can design in flavor. So this is what I was saying earlier about how we get to change the other elements of the game to suit our design, which is usually unheard of. But for whatever reason, our management at Fictional Longship Studios wants to give us a ton of power. So I'm not going to complain. It's what do we want to do with that power? What do we want to do with systems like thievery? So Bedora is saying, I am no PvPer, so I would keep thieving being NPCs, smart AIs, since it would give incentive for players to bounty hunt said thieves, giving the gameplay element. So Beodora is kind of hitting a little bit on what we're saying about raid bosses having items dropped in the world as loot. I think that might be quite cool. But then, you know me, I love anything that makes a story. So it's not essentially the best design decision, but the idea that you and your mateys slay a raid boss and you acquire a bunch of weapons and it's got like the names and feats of a bunch of other players you've never met on, I think that'd be kind of cool. And Roguelink is saying pirates as a raid boss, so that the thievery is happening via an NPC that can be raided. Then, so how would that work, DJ? Because essentially, those resources would be held essentially in stasis until the raid boss is defeated, right? And then they'd just be reintroduced into the economy.
But this was as opposed to
player
the resources just losing them altogether. Like, say, instead of just losing your magical item, like we can just have players lose their normal broadsword, but if it's like a legendary thing, it's something that gets added to the loot.
And I do like the idea that one can go to great lengths to reacquire one's own sword. And though some players will end up hoarding swords that are named, I went through a long period of decapitating all my kills and keeping the heads in my bank in Ultima Online. Which, when I say out loud, does make me sound like a serial killer. I didn't think of it like that. But, you know, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Jumping back into chat, so iCall51 is saying for thievery, we should also have crafting supplies. Should have it so that crafting supplies are kept in a warehouse from your home city and are safe from being stolen by a mugger or pirate, so that only equipment currently worn can be stolen.
See, I'd say the opposite. I'd say if we were to add thievery, we'd want to not have like common petty thievery where you're stealing from a player, but rather we'd rather have like large groups who are organized try to steal from other larger groups.
Oh, I just saw the figuring out how to monetize our players. Oh no, that's what we're not doing. So this is really interesting because if you all are seeing like our focus is now being this wonderful kind of 3-tiered experience. So we have the player level down here. Players go out, they make things, they slay things, they go on adventures, they go on quests. Then players join groups. Groups do very much the same thing. They kill bigger things, they make more stuff, more complicated objects together. You know, the idea of guild level group crafting I think is awesome. And then we have the towns, the cities, the villages. They're playing their own game as well. And that's the point where we could have theft at a grand scale. So the resources held in a warehouse are used for construction of a town or village. Those can be stolen.
You mean Grand Theft Auto? I'm just making a joke.
What you did there, I saw it. I was trying to think of like Grand Theft, It's a Horse, and I couldn't think of like an equestrian type pun. So you can tell I've been grinding hard on this topic. So jumping back into chat, iCall51 says bounties would be good too. I love the idea of, assuming money no object, that NPCs or monsters that slay players that we buff them up a little bit, give them a bit of backstory. That elite mobs are creatures that have killed other players. I love the idea of that. Beadora, Grand Theft Chariot. Oh, and the Artsy Poe. The Artsy Poe made it first. Props for props due. So then, Shoyad's saying, how do we communicate the relative wealth of the regions to players? Is it environmental storytelling, or is there some kind of international commerce screen showing this? If the towns are controlled by players, even if they're players acting as NPCs, then it should be environmental. So you can observe the wealth of an area. If it's not controlled by players, if players are just interacting with it and it's all computer-controlled NPCs, then they should be able to see the wealth of a region. What are your feels on that, dude?
I'd say it should be somewhere in between.
Okay.
Whereas it should be evident within the design of the town, but also you don't know like the exact wealth until you go and try to exchange your currency for that region's currency.
Okay.
And see how much you get. And so some enterprising player might decide, I want to make a business out of this. I will tell you the exchange rates because I go and exchange money all the time.
I also like the idea that knowledge about the wealth of a region is valuable, and that we can almost lead it to what's the phrase? We could almost lead it to like not espionage, but like the knowledge of the economic situation is valuable, and that it. No, the words completely failed me. Completely failed me. I don't know why you all keep me around. I'm waffling nonsense. Beadormas, so mining mountain regions versus trees, hunting versus fields of grain and cows. Ooh. Oh, and Rhymes Moose was also saying, if players are carrying magical energy and they lose someone death, that energy would be going to the enemy that killed them and translate directly to power. Well, so Rhymes and Moose, it depends on how we want to do that. And I know that's like the flippy floppiest answer. So what I mean is that if the enemy player is then able to take their magic items, then most certainly. But if they're unable to recharge them, then eventually that energy will dissipate through the system. And where was the... Oh, yes. Could we have a living ecology that's tied to the economy? So I want to say yes, Greenfire, but there was a brilliant documentary about Ultima Online, which I watched recently. So, as you may or may not know, Ultima Online had wisps, cows, chickens, all sorts of animals throughout the world. And they're just like little NPCs that trot around. The first thing that broke Ultima Online's economy was that everyone went out and just mass slaughtered all of these animals and just sold their stuff. So they would like murder a cow, skin it, chop it up, sell everything, repeat. Yeah, Roguelink is saying, speaking of that documentary, every player is an apex predator. So, yeah. The living ecology didn't work because humans are terrible and awful. So, if we could make it so that there is enough creatures in the ecology that threaten players directly, then it might work. But
also, if we're doing a dynamic economy that scales, like if we find a way to implement supply and demand into our economy, which should be relatively easier since economic like simulations are much easier to get your hand on than prior video game code. We could just say that because there's so much in the market that none of this is worth anything. We could, like, the price could, like, just dynamically increase. Or decrease, I should say.
So, one thing that's interesting, so Rhymes and Moose is saying, what if powerful creatures, even up to raid-level bosses, lead attacks on towns and take resources? Like, if we're going for if we're leaning on a heavy ecology method, this could work quite well. I'm not saying that we're going to have orcs, but the warg is one of the, or the wah, however you want to say it, is one of the better examples of this. So if enough little mobs are left for long enough, they'll band together, and one of them will end up becoming the boss and the leader of them, and then they'll kind of fight each other, and if one ends up popping up, then they'll lead a raid across. That could be
It's
something
funny
that works.
you say that, because that's exactly what happens in one of the arcs for Log Horizon.
Okay, so maybe this design session has just turned into how do we make Log Horizon but for realsies, yo. Oh, Jedi Master Killer, who has been very quiet today, throwing some in, saying that I like the idea of specialization when it comes to crafting, meaning that one specializes in what one can craft, investing points to master certain weapon classes or armor, meaning that high-level equipment are pretty rare but also very expensive. I don't know if it's relevant, but it's just a thought. No, it's a heckin' cool thought. And Jedi Master, one of the things that we were talking about earlier was also the idea that multiple craftspeople need to come together to craft like the high-end stuff. So it's not just like you become the ultimate blacksmith, you make the ultimate sword. It's to make the ultimate sword, you need like a jeweler, a blacksmith, an enchanter, a mage, a feckin', I don't know, someone who plays the didgeridoo. I didn't think this analogy through before I started it, and honestly I'm regretting it. But you need like 4 players working together to craft the ultimate thing rather than one. So you can become dedicated, but you're not the lone craftsman. You're not the one. DJ, where am I going with this?
I don't know, I'm just letting you find your way.
Will finds a way. So it isn't just the case of one master craftsman making everything, which, at least on RP servers, tended to lead to the fact that whoever could race to being the top blacksmith would basically win from that point. Like, because everyone would just go to the person who could make everything. And your mate who's just starting to do blacksmithing might kind of sort of be able to do the stuff you want, but why go to him when you can go to the Grandmaster? Alpha the Deluge. The one craftsman to rule them all. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Right. So, we're at 4:30. I've probably got about another 10 or 20 minutes left in the tank, I reckon. So let's start bringing this to a close. So what suggestions, elements, or features has not been mentioned that you would like to throw in now? And DJ, I might leave this document unlocked for a little bit longer after session, because not having your good self has meant that poor Rhymes with Moose and a couple others have been doing most of the Greenfire and Moose have been doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Also, I don't know who Thomas is in chat, but they were adding, for humane design, player shops that can trade whilst you're offline. So, to Thomas or whomever that was, one thing that we liked the idea was that there would be marketplaces where things could be sold even when players are offline. Or guilds and groups could have their own shops. So if your guild makes some particularly fancy stuff, then people can buy from you directly. So just approving those. Elite. Man, the gameplay loop's chunking out. This is great. So jumping back into chat, Icon51 is saying we should make crafting skills raise the level of the best expensive swords you can make, but will not give any advantages for the lower level items. So new player. Oh, okay, yeah. So if you're a master level craftsman, your low tier stuff doesn't raise beyond a certain point, so that you don't end up basically classing new players out. That's fair. And Greenfire is saying if you're a master in your craft, you could take on an apprentice. I really like that. What do you think, DJ?
Yeah, that can definitely work. Especially like we were talking about subsidizing the guilds training newer players earlier.
Yeah.
Because it's always in the best interest to have of the firms, of the guilds, businesses, to have like people they can sell to people who can buy their stuff, and also people they can hire to work for them.
Okay, so whilst people are throwing in... Oh, okay, so Greenfire is saying, if you're a master in a craft, you could... Oh, I just read that out loud, didn't I? Bloody hell, my brain. Rhymes and Moose saying, I'm not sure where we're sitting on this point regarding magical energy as a resource currency. It's important enough for player activity. I do expect what players would converge on as a currency regardless. So this is a group decision. This is not for me to dictate. Personally, I would vote against magic as a currency. Magic is a resource, like ore, like wood. It might be rarer, but it's needed for crafting. Now, we could dictate the amount of power that is available in each region so that no singular region has all the magic items. And that the more magic items that are in play, the harder it is to acquire. Something along those lines to keep it from being like, yo, this nation has all magic items, and you guys have a little bit of magic items, and now you are all getting smushed by this other nation. And I know that there will be an imbalance to this, at least in the initial, regardless, because that's what players are like, yo. That's my thoughts and feelings on that. Do you have anything to add on that, DJ?
No, I agree.
Awesome. Beadora is adding crafting skills could raise level or something of the guild as a whole to make the point of several working on crafting instead of one person racing to the master. Yeah, Beadora, I really like that. I think that at this point I would put group crafting as one of the USPs on this, because I can't think of another game that's done that. I can think of ones where, like, you know, one profession builds a thing that another profession needs, but that's still kind of, yeah, that's not all of you working together. Okay, this is just me projecting now, but I love the idea of, you know, you and your team forging something together. You know, you're each doing different parts of it, certainly, but it's all of your different disciplines coming together. When I tried making an Ultima Online server, I tried to make it so that every skill had an applicable crafting set. So, like, if you mastered meditation and blacksmithing, you could make a monk set. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There is an example. The closest thing I can think of to group crafting is that one Final Fantasy where you had group spellcast.
Ooh, yeah. That would work. Yeah. That would work really well. So, I mean, as you all know, I love weapon customization, and I do tend to watch a lot of blacksmithing videos just to chill out. So I've got a very kind of romanticized view of it. And in regards to the magic system, I think we want to expand it a little bit and then work out the values and powers and how it works. But Beadora is saying group spellcast. Heck yeah for covens. I love the idea of that. In LT, we had what was called a magic wedge, specifically incanters, but I think it could be applicable, which is like each person funnels their power into a single person at the head of a wedge, and it allows them to cast like crazy level powerful spells. So I think it's like, and I'm just shorthanding here because I can't remember all the rule sets, but a player can get up to, I think, level 3 in terms of what they can do. But a group can get up to like 50, and you're passing your power forward. We could do group spellcasting, especially if we think about, because someone mentioned elemental magics and stuff like that. Like, there could be, you know, different regions having access to different elemental magics would potentially encourage travel between regions. A mage might need to learn 2 different sets from 2 different areas that are on opposing sides of our fictional world. And then you've got a journey's quest, you know, experience different things, go to different places, keeping everybody from being just in one city, in one town all the time. So that's just something. Roguelink is saying Ogre Battle 64 has a neat combo magic system. I didn't play the one on the 64, so I will have to check that out. But Chiad's asking me if I watched Clickspring. I've been on stream! You've literally been here with me! If I was watching a YouTube video, it would literally be up here. At the moment, the only thing we've got on is the Sounds of Albion from Lost Chapters in Fable 2. So there we go. Wait, no, that's the wrong one. There we go. You're seeing behind the scenes again. So... Yeah, Beadora is also saying that the apprenticeship would encourage guilds to want to recruit new players and teach them. So one thing that I want to propose, and I just wanted your economical opinion on this one. So in some systems that I've been a part of, the nations and the guilds are two separate entities. So when I say guild, I mean like the Mages Guild, the Bards Guild, the Alchemists Guild, that kind of thing. Not like player guilds. So these kind of like... these are factions without nations. They usually have control of pretty powerful stuff, or are part of like training new players and things like that. How do you think that would affect our economy here?
Well, if you were to have that, then it would basically be how guilds work in real life, where like they have sanctioned people who pay in, and they set like a base price for work. And like, so even if a player guild had X person, if that person was part of the Magic Guild, you would have to pay them at least X amount and other things. Or pay the guild, pay the Wizards Guild X amount of money to let you use your wizard. Basically, you're getting them on loan from the guild.
Okay. And it wouldn't cause too much problem by having because the guilds would operate in multiple regions. Theoretically. That wouldn't cause too much problem?
Yeah, it just depends on whether you want, like, whether you want players effectively to set, like, the base price, or if you want these organizations to set the base price, and like who is allowed to. Basically, who do you want to be the gatekeepers? The masses or these specific organizations that know specifically about?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Because, we would be putting the power into the hands of the guilds, and we've already suggested the idea of things like, whatchamacallit, the idea of mayors and, people being able to control towns and cities. And the guilds would be exceedingly powerful in this kind of setup. So... Beadora is suggesting that guilds might be a way to do certification, so that you can pay money to be a guild-certified individual. And that could be something you could use when discussing trade and things. I'm not just a blacksmith, I'm a guild-certified blacksmith. I think that's starting to feel more like Flavor Town Money Sink, which I like, I'm not against. But it's not... With an additional round of
The problem is, what if you have the greatest blacksmith in the world, but refuses to join the guild, who sets like a base price because for all people who are a part of that guild.
Yeah, it doesn't create a situation where, unless someone can think of a way in which that would enrich the experience, I'm inclined to just I'm inclined to be done with the idea of guilds in that respect. So while there might be like single areas or like one-shot NPC factions for flavor, I don't think we'd have guilds overall. Because what we really want is for our players to band together and set up shop inside a town or a city or a village, right?
Yeah, more or less.
The idea of going to the blacksmith's monument up some mountain and making an offering so that, you get blessed by, Harry the Hammer or whatever our god is. But, that could be something that could add a similar kind of flavour. Like offerings that take objects like straight out of the economy. That could work. Oh, actually, I like that. So it's not going to a faction. It's not going. It's almost you're burning objects in offering to obtain a blessing or a skill or a something. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that could work a little bit better than standardized guilds, because yeah. And Rhyme Smooth is saying, just a thought on the currency type, whatever it is, we need to make sure it's the most important resource to players from start to end game. Otherwise, the players will end up using some replacement currently. Well, so Rhyme Smooth, that's one of the reasons why we're trying to design this economy to be robust. You're right that players will use a replacement currency, but it's the reasons why they do that. Like, there's no replacement currency in EVE Online. There's Plex, but only because Plex has inherent value. But Plex can be put into the system with an external currency, which is where it gets very complicated. The reasons why a lot of servers tend to create their own currencies is due to hyperinflation. Like, the currency they're provided no longer represents it. So, or is no longer
and also,
able to... Go for it.
Since this is a video game and we have perfect control over how things are bought and sold, we can just make it impossible for things to be bought or sold without the exchange of money. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying that's a possibility.
Yeah, we have that as an option. So yeah. Well, I tell you what, DJ, as I think all of us are a little bit... I know I'm certainly getting a bit glassy-eyed. So I'm thinking of bringing this to a close. I don't think we've hit a general perfect consensus on this one, but I think as a day's mental exercise, this has definitely got me thinking. And what's going to probably happen, I don't know about you all, but I'm going to step away, make a cup of tea, and be like, that was a great idea that I never discussed.
Maybe we come back to this.
This could be a twofer. So, yeah, if anyone has any final comments, like, now is the time to throw it together. Oh, Greenfire's asking, could we have the basic trading of food and basic goods be the starting point? So Greenfire, we're definitely going to have goods being traded between towns, villages, and cities, as required. So that is a thing that I think we've agreed on. So while people are throwing more things in. So, DJs, you know, this is going to be a long-ass waffling goodbye, but I want to thank you so much for jumping in on this one, because I feckin' love this as a topic. As someone who once commanded the red gem market on my server in World of Warcraft, to someone who tried to work out what the hell platinum was, to being in a LARP server, an RP server, where currency was so valuable because there was so little of it. Like, I've seen all sorts of in-game economies, not digital economies, and it's a numerical way of observing human behavior in a game, and I love it. So, thank you for joining us, man.
Yeah. And one thing I'm about to link in chat before we go.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Just on the topic of economies, I'm going to link what's called the U.S. debt clock, and it just shows in real time how much of a national debt we have, and a whole bunch of more stuff.
Yeah. Now, is it true? Was it the French that invented the concept of the national debt, or is that my
that
brain?
I do not know.
Yeah. But national debt did end up unlocking a shite-load of wealth for a shite-load of nations. And I know it was like mid-Napoleonic era that the concept was floated, but I couldn't tell you who came up with it first, because my Napoleonic era history knowledge is probably melted out of my brain from far too many double gins. And yeah, so Chiat's correct that national debt is not quite what you think it is. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know, DJ. But to everyone who's stuck with us, I am not going to explain national debt right now. I'm struggling with magic debt as a concept. So, yeah. This has been a heckin' load of fun. And I want to thank you all for coming with. So, DJ, thank you for lending some economical flavour to this old little design discussion.
Yeah, no problem, Will.
So, looking into the chat, yep, I think we are. I think we are good to wrap it up and call it here. Thank you all for coming with today. Huge thank you, obviously, to Matt for jumping on and talking about RPG Tycoon, which was coming back from the other direction. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I do apologise. Reflective, you did miss a whole bunch. But VOD's going to be up, so you know. So everybody, I'm going to leave the document open for... Usually I close it up at this point, but I'm going to leave it open for a little while longer. So if you have any comments, thoughts, or feels, if you feel there's anything that we discussed here that hasn't been added to this document, boof, go around. Throw it in there. I want to say a massive, massive thank you to the Artsy Poe, who not only did us the original fictional Longship Studios, but also did us this brand new Longship Online. We're starting to look more and more like a real studio. Like people are gonna get the wrong idea very quickly.
Or you're finally gonna get the right idea.
Okay, but I can't. Like I can facilitate, but I should not be in charge of a studio. I know enough to know that Will, with complete freedom and autonomy, is a terrifying idea. I need someone to sanity check it. Like, I'm not even joking. A reflective gamer saying, much like the Duke of London. That is another story. I am thinking of jumping back on a little bit later with some gameplay streams. I'm seriously considering trying this Stalker Call of Pipriat, or however you pronounce it, high def mod. So I might do that. We also I made us all a wiki. So if you want to add yourself and your characters to that, I'm trying to keep track of all the deities, references, and jokes that we have on these streams. Right. So no big deal, but we just spent nearly 4 hours designing an in-game economy. I'd say that's a pretty bloody good afternoon. Right.
Yeah, I'd say this was good talking in theory. I think we should come back next time and make decisions for our specific game, since we spent all this time talking about which decisions we can make.
You know what? That's a really good point. So, okay, everybody, this is going to be a two-parter. So we're going to come back to Longship Online for the next one. And I will work out when that's going to be, and I will make sure... I'm using the Twitch events to let everybody know. So, yeah. Right. So, DJ, thank you once again. Let me just switch to talk show mode. Thank you all for being here with me. I'd also like to thank Tiny Stand-in Paul Coquette. And I will see you all in a little while.